Welcome to the global nautical survival game. The strange voice echoed. From now on you will spend the rest of your lives upon the sea. Do not worry about any illnesses or physical disabilities you once had. This system will cure them all and grant you a relatively fair starting point. You are free to sail across the seas and do whatever you desire. Whether you remain a nameless nobody or rise to worldwide renown depends solely on yourself. The ocean will offer you infinite possibilities. There is only one thing you must keep in mind. Keep moving forward. Do not let the black fog behind you catch up. At present the speed of the black fog is 10 knots. The peculiar voice reverberated then faded into silence. A strange echo lingered in his mind. Yang awoke to find himself lying on an old worn-out bed. When he tried to sit up, the dust he stirred choked him into a coughing fit. Looking around he realized he was inside a narrow, dim, dilapidated room. Not far away stood a table upon which lay a desiccated skeleton. Its left hand still clutched a rusted flintlock and most of its skull was missing as if it had taken its own life. "This is," Yang murmured, showing no fear as he instead examined his own thin hands. He was actually standing. This was nothing short of a miracle. Just minutes ago he had still been a bedridden paraplegic, yet now he had miraculously regained his health. At 12 he had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and by 20 he was completely paralyzed. He had never abandoned his life playing games with only his mouth and streaming them, supporting himself with the money he earned all the way until he was 25. He often played horror games so unmoving skeletons and corpses elicited little reaction from him. So what that voice said was real, he breathed. Yang muttered to himself and looked out the window. Outside stretched an endless expanse of ocean waves, occasionally rising and falling. At that moment the strange genderless voice sounded again in his mind. By now everyone should know where they are. That's right. You are all at sea, each separated by more than 500 nautical miles, so you won't be meeting anytime soon. Nearby you should find a small booklet called the nautical log. It contains many useful functions that allow you to communicate without barriers. Try it, and you will understand. As for other details, they will be announced later in the form of notices. Please look forward to it. The voice faded away. Lowering his gaze, he saw a small booklet lying on the bed, the 4 characters for nautical log written on its black cover. It was no larger than a palm and emitted a faint glow as though calling for him to open it. Yang picked it up and opened it. The first page contained the rules. 1. Without your permission, no one else may board your vessel. 2. Items on your ship cannot be stolen by other players unless you are dead. 3. Every ship is equipped with a grappling hook of infinite durability. Boldly snatch any drifting objects you see. 4. You must upgrade and reinforce your ship, making it appear sufficiently safe. 5. Be wary of the night and of the fog. Once you are engulfed by the black fog behind you, you will die. 6. This manual is bound to your soul and can be browsed within your mind. 7. On the sea you will never be truly alone. The booklet felt like human skin to the touch as Yang flipped to the next page. The second page showed the day's weather, which he skipped for now. The third page displayed his status information. Yang, status healthy. A human figure spread in a large character pose was drawn beside it, the entire body marked in green. The average attribute value for an adult is 5 and can be increased through training up to 10. An attribute value of 10 is the limit for ordinary humans. Strength 3050, spirit 7100. The higher your spirit, the greater your resistance to madness and the faster your sanity recovers. Agility 40100, constitution 3050, perception 50200, sanity 100100. If sanity falls below 50, you will go mad. Below 30, suicidal thoughts arise. Below 10. Energy 100,100. If energy drops below 50, you become drowsy. Below 30, you may faint. Vitality 100,100. Talon iron, will you never admit defeat. Spirit cap 1. Your sanity will always retain at least 1 point, and you will not commit suicide. When your sanity drops significantly I-50 or below, you enter a berserk frenzy. After reading his attribute page, Yang felt somewhat relieved. Low attributes required little experience to improve, so it would not be too hard for him to catch up. He continued turning pages until he found the chat channels. Inside there were world chat, regional chat, and private chat sections. For now the world channel was the most lively as messages kept appearing. Anyone here? What is going on? I was on the toilet, hadn't even wiped yet, and in the blink of an eye I ended up on a ship. It's just me here. Does anyone still have a phone? Call the police for me. Who kidnapped me? Do you know who my dad is? Maybe your dad got pulled in too. Son, is that you? Don't randomly recognize relatives. My broken arm is actually healed. I can feel pain. The number of online users reached tens of billions. It seemed everyone had been dragged into this. Yang did not rush to speak. Instead, he read the chat, quietly gathering potential information. Each person could only send 10 messages in world chat per day. Any additional messages required payment in conch coins, 100 conch coins per line. Yang Yi had no idea what these conch coins were and had none on hand. After more than 10 minutes, the chaotic shouting gradually subsided and the conversation became more meaningful. Do your manuals also have 7 rules? Looking for allies. Anyone want to team up? We're too far apart and have no coordinates. There's no way to group up now. We should share information and help each other. Have you checked your ships? I found a piece of equipment. A description of the equipment followed. Name: bloodstained harpoon type, relic quality, fine item quality, tiers: common, fine, excellent, rare, exquisite, heroic, master. Description: extremely sharp. Deals minor damage to abominations, but enrages them. Note: using relics carries a risk of lowering your sanity. The world channel instantly exploded. What are abominations? Are there monsters in this world? I don't have anything like that. I only found some fresh water bread and vegetables in my cabin. You have vegetables? I only have sausages. Out at sea, vegetables were far rarer than meat. What about your ships? Are they big? Mine is over 100 meters long. It's huge. What? My ship is only 10 meters. That person quickly sent his ship's details. Iron will level 1, iterability 50005000, capacity 8,000 units, speed 5 knots, ship skill, full barrage cannon fire rate, increases to 200 for 15 minutes. Triple launch whale harpoon can pierce through and latch onto a target object. Description: its speed may not be great, but yours had better be. Damn, this game is totally unfair. His ship starts at level 1 with cannons. Special ships come with skills. Mine is completely bare bones. I want to reroll my start. Is there a cash shop? I've got money to burn. Are you all idiots? His speed is only 5 knots. That's slower than the black fog. Oh right, the black fog is 10 knots. He's doomed, huh? At that moment, an announcement popped up. Nautical announcement: all of your starting conditions are different. Ships, onboard items, personal talents, and starting locations are all set according to your personalities and experiences. No objections will be accepted. Who would believe that? There's definitely something shady going on. Some people start with weapons while I only have food. If others hoard grain, I'll hoard guns. Other people are my granaries. Isn't it possible that monsters spawn near those with cannons, but not near you? Yang Yi closed the log and began rummaging through the cabin. He discovered that the flintlock in the skeleton's hand was actually a piece of equipment. Name: waterlogged rusted flintlock type, relic quality, excellent. Description: once a masterwork firearm, it has been soaked for too long and is heavily corroded. It has only a 50% chance to fire, but deals moderate damage to abominations. This gun requires no ammunition. It automatically reloads in 1 minute and holds 1 shot. An excellent grade item. Yang Yi's expression grew grave. Just as the announcement had claimed everyone's starting conditions were fair in their own way. If he had been given this gun from the start, did that not imply a hell-level beginning? He pushed aside the skeleton on the table and discovered a sheet of paper pressed beneath it. The paper was rotted and only a few fragments of writing could still be barely made out. There are no more supplies on the ship. I can only try fishing. Today luck was good. I caught a tiger grouper big enough to last 2 days. I fished up an antique pistol. The gunshot sounds strange, but it looks quite valuable. The rest was soaked in blood, and only the final line remained legible. How could something like that exist in the sea? After reading, Yang Yi frowned slightly and rose to leave the captain's cabin. Outside lay the deck corridor. He lifted his head and carefully examined his ship. Nightmare level 1, iterability 300300, a capacity 400 units, speed 40 knots, hull skill nightmare, sleeping on board, causes nightmares, spirit recovery, efficiency 75. Curse of the angler: this ship is cursed, cannot catch normal fish. Description: this ship has drifted at sea for centuries, finally welcoming its new master. Yang Yi finished reading the ship's information. His expression darkened. This ship was a ghost ship. The hull was covered in barnacles and seaweed, seemingly uncleaned for years. The deck was also wet, creaking with every step. He had played many horror games. In scenes like this, monsters were. Fortunately, after searching everywhere, he found no other moving thing. Yang Yi let out a long breath. He didn't want to have a fierce duel with some unknown creature right at the start. He also figured out the ship's layout. The ship was about 12 meters long, consisting of the rudder, captain's cabin, deck, and cargo hold. The rudder was on a platform at the bow, slightly elevated with a good view. Behind it was the captain's cabin, containing a bed and simple furniture. Further back was the ship's atrium with a tall mast standing upright. At the stern was the cargo hold leading inside the hull for storing goods. Yang Yi went into the hold to check. It was empty, not even bugs, only a damp, musty smell hit him. His initial supplies were 0. After all this ghost ship had drifted for countless years, it would be strange if there were food and drink. Yang Yi opened the log and continued browsing the world channel, curious about others' findings. Most people in the chat were showing off their ships. Most were ordinary, but some special ships stood out among them. A few were particularly dazzling. Gale level 1, iterability 800800, a capacity 500 units, speed 70 knots, hull skill ride the wind, and wave speed increased by 100, duration 5 minutes. Description: you guys can't even inhale its exhaust, trust me. This was probably the fastest ship available. Other basic ships, depending on size, had speeds between 30 and 40 knots. Larger ships generally had higher durability, but were slower. Yangi's Nightmare was above average in speed. Sakura Level 1, durability 1000, capacity 1000 units, speed 35 knots. Fortune radiates all around the cherry blossom tree. On board, emits evolutionary fortune light, occasionally altering crew attributes, possibly triggering evolution. Description: hope the crew stays human. This info caused the world channel to go unusually silent for a few seconds. Haha, my ship is awesome, right? I feel like I'm evolving. WYYYYY. Are you sure that's not mutation? Sakura, right. I suggest you sail fast, don't run into me, or it'll shove my cannon up your. That was from the Steel Ambition, which had removed anonymity, showing its ship name. Attached was a photo from the log's screenshot function. It was a steel warship armed to the teeth with at least 20 cannons along the sides. Its firepower was maxed out, overflowing with martial virtue. But when people remembered its speed was only 5 knots, laughter erupted. Baka, let's see if you survive tomorrow. Damn it. Wait for me. Then followed a stream of useless insults, many words censored. Seems different languages all get translated into one's native tongue through the system. Yangi silently typed, count me in. Then he continued scrolling up and finally found interesting information. Have you tried fishing? Don't interrupt him. Fishing. I discovered fishing suddenly. I don't want to go back. I fish once a week, a whole week at a time. I just prepared the bait. Your ship is moving, you can't prepare bait. Damn, why didn't you say so earlier? I wasted my black bread. Guess what I caught? A bottle of Farmer's 3 Fists. Yang Yi's eyes lit up. If fresh water could be caught, that would be great. His ship also had a fishing rod line, named barnacle-crusted moldy fishing rod type, tool relic quality. Fine description: reduces the chance of catching normal fish, slightly increases chance of catching unidentified objects. Trust me, you won't like what it brings up. This unidentified object probably includes fresh water. Yang Yi guessed. But before fishing Yang, he had to adjust the ship's course and speed. He had no specific goal for now, so he decided to follow the default direction, full speed ahead. In the distance at the end of his sight, a black streak, probably the border of the dark mist. So heading forward, controlling the ship was also very simple, requiring no skill, all magic. He only needed to hold the rudder to easily change the ship's heading and control it, including adjusting speed and using onboard equipment like grappling hooks. Overall, it felt similar to playing a sailing game, easier than driving a car. Skip the tutorial, direct manship integration. The rudder was also at the bow, allowing the player to steer while keeping an eye on the sea ahead. Without this, it would be impossible for one person to sail this ship. As for power, Yang Yi looked at the mast, which only held a few symbolic rags. He decided not to think about it and focused on grabbing floating debris. Rotten wood 1, rotten wood 1, ragged cloth 1, rotten wood 1. The sailing log kept popping up new notifications. This gameplay was very similar to Gold Miner, just that the targets were moving. Items caught were converted into resources stored in the hold, viewable in the log. Each rotten wood had a chance to convert into 1 unit of timber, each rag into 1 unit of fabric. Yang Yi did a quick calculation. The probability was less than 10. That is, grabbing 10 pieces of rotten wood yielded about 1 unit of timber. Deliberately picking better-shaped driftwood gave a higher probability. Yang Yi grabbed over 100 floating objects, harvesting 5 units of timber and 3 units of fabric over 3 hours. Efficiency was low, but it was a technical job. Efficiency would improve with skill. These timber and fabric could be used to upgrade his ship to level 2. He needed timber 200, fabric 100. Captain's remains. He already knew what the remains were. Definitely the skeleton in the captain's cabin. So he couldn't discard the bones. Collecting that much wood and fabric would take at least a week. And this was just when higher levels came, upgrades would probably be even harder, but requiring remains to upgrade a ship. Yang Yi suddenly realized that special ships might have different upgrade materials. He immediately opened the chat channel to check, and indeed it was so. Basic ships required fewer materials, just 100 timber and 50 fabric, no bones needed. As for the Steel Ambition, it needed steel to upgrade. Damn, where am I supposed to find steel in the middle of the ocean? How do I upgrade this hammer? As everyone knows, iron is heavier than water and only sinks to the bottom. Fishing guys can catch anything. I just caught a unit of steel. Huh, buying steel at high price. Whoever gives me steel I'll take as my little brother. Baka, you still buying steel? Can you survive tomorrow first? The black fog is catching up. Sakura, right. Stop being anonymous. Wait for me, I'll get you. Yang Yi closed the log. It seems special ships aren't all advantages. Upgrade difficulty is high, easy to fall behind in level. He picked up the fishing rod, ready to fish. The sky is clear and cloudless, making it a perfect day for fishing. Yang Yi took a deep breath and glanced at his status. He also used the simple crafting function in his log to make a makeshift spear from 5 pieces of wood just in case. Meanwhile, the flintlock pistol was tucked behind his waist. Once he caught a giant creature, he might need to subdue it through physical means. As for bait, Yang Yi had already confirmed in the log that fishing here required no bait. It must be the system's power. But using bait could improve fishing efficiency. Preparations complete. Now, let's fish. Yang Yi cast the rod, and the hook traced an arc before splashing into the sea. He wasn't very skilled at fishing, but now he had plenty of time to learn. 15 minutes passed, and the float. Yang Yi opened the world channel to see what other fishermen had caught to prepare himself mentally. How did you guys know I caught something? 100 centimeters. Attached was a photo of a large bass. Who the hell asked you? I also caught a giant one. How big? Huge. Didn't pull it up? Then why say anything? Yang Yi scrolled up and finally saw an interesting comment. You fishermen should be careful. If you see something wrong, cut the line immediately. There's no penalty as long as you don't lose the rod. The line regenerates infinitely. So what did you catch? Looks like a human figure. I just cut it. A mermaid. You released your wife. That thing was definitely weird. You can tell from my fishing rod. Name: refined carbon fiber fishing rod. Type: tool. Grade: fine. A description: an excellent fishing rod can be passed down to your grandson. Increases fishing success rate, reduces fishing energy consumption, and slightly increases the chance of catching unknown objects. A good one. How come my rod is a common white? You should be grateful. I'm an experienced fisherman, but don't even have a rod. I'm still using a grapple hook. A simple rod requires 10 wood to craft. You envy too early. Look at my ship. Name: fisherman's boat. Level 1, a durability 345400, a capacity 500 units, speed 25 knots. Hull skill none. Description: it's not sturdy and has no skills, but it makes you look more like a fisherman. Seeing the small boat with a speed of 25 knots, half of the envious people backed off. How did your boat's durability drop? I just pulled up a 3-meter great white shark. It almost swallowed me. Now for big things, I just cut the line. Otherwise, if I pull them on board, who knows who'll eat whom. Yang Yi kept scrolling and found that fishing could catch not only fish, but also other things, even treasure chests and fresh water. I caught a treasure chest. A treasure chest. What's inside? Secret. You all can catch fish, but I haven't even seen a fish shadow. I've only caught socks, gnome fu sen quan, and even balloons. Gnome fu sen quan. This balloon, is it proper? It's not used, is it? By checking the chat records, one could judge. Fishing here could catch many incredible things, even monsters. Yang Yi had prepared himself mentally. If something wrong floated up, he would cut the line immediately. A few minutes later, the float finally started to twitch as if something was biting. Yang Yi held his breath and concentrated. He had a spear and a pistol. As long as it was a fish, it shouldn't be a big problem. The float sank. Now pull the rod. Yang Yi pulled hard, staring fixedly at the azure sea. He didn't see any huge shadow. With a casual tug, he yanked the thing out of the water with almost no resistance. What came up was a small fish about the thickness of a thumb, but not entirely a fish. Its body was about 3 centimeters long, streamlined, similar to an ordinary sardine. However, this fish had 4-5 centimeter long legs protruding from its sides, standing quadrupedally on the ship's deck. Yang Yi was stunned, staring at the fish. Is this a fish? Yang Yi was shocked. You discovered a strange fish. Sanity 2. The next second, the fish skillfully used its long legs to flee toward the sea, but Yang Yi smacked it dead on the deck with his spear. Name: long-legged sardine. Type: food. Description: abyssal fish species. It is said that eating it often can give you long legs. Edible, non-toxic, delicious, but eating it requires courage and may reduce sanity. Yang Yi picked up the fish. It weighed less than 100 grams. The 4 pale long legs were broken, with a structure identical to human legs, and felt springy and bouncy. Can this even be eaten? Yang Yi remembered the ship's skill. Angler's curse, unable to catch normal fish. He used his log to take a photo of this fish and shared it to the world channel. Has anyone caught this kind of fish? A stone stirred 1,000 ripples. Holy crap, what is that? Mental pollution. Sanity 8. You call this a fish? Why are you hurting my eyes? Sanity 10. Blocked. Blocked. Never see you again. Yang Yi was instantly blocked by over 1 billion people, who all of them had varying degrees of sanity loss. But then someone suddenly sent a private message. Is the seawater in your area black? You'd better leave quickly, or you might be attacked by some unidentified monster. Yang Yi glanced at the azure sea beneath his boat, feeling a bit speechless. No, my ship is a ghost ship. Wow, you're something. Add me as a friend. Captain Suda of the Gale submitted a friend request. Yang Yi accepted. Oh, adding a friend wouldn't cause any loss. You'd better not post such photos anymore. My sanity is only at 54. If it drops further, I'll go mad. Got it. Yang Yi also realized the seriousness, but for food and fresh water, he had to keep fishing. You caught a long-legged sardine. You caught a long-legged sardine. You caught a long-legged sardine, missing. Shit. Your sanity decreased by 1. Yang Yi felt the system was deliberately giving him an ordinary person would go mad after less than a day of fishing. After 3 hours, he had harvested 8 long-legged sardines, some missing a leg. But fresh water. He hadn't seen a trace. What about the promised known Fu San Quan? Without food, humans can survive over a week. But without water, a person dies within 3 to 5 days and less. Drinking his own urine. Unless absolutely necessary, Yang, he didn't want to go that far. Steeling himself, he grabbed a long-legged sardine as bait and began his next cast. After fishing for over an hour, the sky began to darken. The first night was about to arrive. Yang, now ravenously hungry, found the scattered long-legged sardines beside him to suddenly appear quite appetizing. However, eating such fish is likely to result in a loss of sanity. Unless absolutely necessary, he wasn't very keen on consuming it, and moreover there was no stove on the boat, leaving him with no choice but to eat it raw. The buoy shook and Yang immediately perked up. He yanked hard, pulling a black fish out of the water. This fish had no long legs covered in sharp spines, its surface sticky, resembling swollen mucus. As soon as it landed on the deck, the mucus broke, oozing out a thick black stinking pus. This fish is disgusting, your sanity decreases by 2. Before Yang could stab it with his spear, the fish had already suffocated. Name: cystic pufferfish. Type: food. Description: abyssal fish whose bodily fluids are highly toxic. Normal people wouldn't eat it unless they wanted to end their lives. Toxic. Yang dared not touch it, piercing it with his spear and tossing it into the cabin. At the same time, he intentionally stabbed it a few more times until the spear tip was stained black, transforming it into a deadly poison spear. As the sky darkened, there was less than an hour until complete darkness. The system had emphasized that night would bring dangers, so Yang did not plan to fish during the night. But just as he was packing up his fishing rod and preparing to return to the captain's cabin, a strange object floated across the surface of the sea. It was a box, to be precise, a treasure chest about the size of a briefcase, drifting by the side of the Nightmare. Yang's heart raced, and he hurried to the helm, turning the boat to chase after the treasure chest. This opportunity was absolutely not to be missed. He maneuvered the grappling hook towards the treasure chest. But the chest was slippery, as if it were a living creature, dodging constantly. After considerable effort, he finally managed to catch the chest and immediately rushed into the cabin to inspect it. Name: waterlogged rotten wood treasure chest. Type: treasure chest. Description: this might not be the kind of treasure chest you were hoping for. Yang was cautious and held his flintlock pistol aimed at the chest, prying it open with his spear. Inside was a severed human head, hairless, with grayish skin seemingly coated in a layer of slime. Upon opening, the severed head reacted, opening its murky eyes and beginning to speak. Sir, may I take a few minutes of your time to introduce you to the omniscient and omnipotent Lord? You cannot understand its words. Your sanity decreases by 5 points. Yang's scalp tingled and his body trembled. Sir, may I? In the next instant, the head jumped out and Yang finally saw its true form. It was an octopus with a human head instead and a mass of twisted tentacles below. It lunged towards Yang, extending its tentacles, revealing a beak-like set of sharp teeth at the bottom, seemingly wanting to bite Yang. But waiting for it was bang! The gun fired, sparks flying, and it did not misfire. A muffled gunshot echoed like a monster's low growl. The octopus exploded into a pile of meat. Hearing the strange gunfire, your sanity decreases by 3. Yang felt a surge of pent-up frustration rising from the depths of his heart, feeling a bit nauseous, so he immediately checked his status. Sanity 88,100. Energy 62,100. Vitality 100,100. It seems that a decrease in sanity can interfere with one's mental state. Fortunately, Yang had a very high mental attribute with a will as resilient as steel, quickly regaining his composure and examining the monster's corpse. Name: head octopus. Type: food material. Description: abyssal fish species. Do not try to understand its words, as that is merely a ploy to ambush you and distract your attention. However, if you can understand its words, then you can only wish yourself good luck. Edible, can be used as material, mildly toxic. Consuming it temporarily grants 1 strength, 1 constitution, 1 spirit, 20 sanity. Note: you cannot exceed the maximum attribute limit of common items, which is 10. This thing still holds some value. Yang gathered the pieces of flesh together and continued to inspect the interior of the treasure chest. Inside were some rusty coins. Yang took one out, which had a seashell pattern on it, while the back featured a cartoonish octopus head. You have obtained 100 seashell coins. Aside from these, the chest was completely empty. Where's the promised fresh water? Seashell coins are useless. It was getting dark. Yang tossed the captain's skeleton into the cabin and returned to the captain's quarters. He did not plan to fish or catch anything at night. The system had warned him that there would be dangers at night. He did not want to take risks right from the start. As for fresh water, he could continue to look for it tomorrow. As for food, he could always eat the long-legged sardines. To survive, Yang did not mind eating strange things as long as they provided protein and energy. He never gave up easily. He had done so in the past, and he would do so now. Lying on that old bed, he tossed and turned. The bed was damp and smelled musty, making it quite uncomfortable. But he had no choice. The night had fully descended. Only a sliver of moonlight shone down, and aside from the sound of the waves and the wind, there was utter silence. Yang Yi was not tired at all, so he opened the world channel to check. The grappling hook can grab treasure chests. He sent out a piece of information. This information was of little value, as anyone who saw a treasure chest would surely go to grab it. However, by sending it out, he could gain goodwill from others and further information. It's true. I also caught a wooden resource treasure chest which yielded 1 unit of steel, 20 units of wood, and 20 units of cloth. Then won't you be able to upgrade your ship quickly? I envy you. I caught a bronze equipment treasure chest and got a treasure. A bloodstained pearl necklace. Type relic. Quality good. Description: it was once a bride's dowry. Its owner has been searching for it ever since. Wearing it grants 1 agility, 1 spirit, 5 sanity. I don't think this thing is a treasure. You're just jealous of me. So dark, my ship has no lights. I guess it needs upgrading to have some. I don't even have a blanket. I'll freeze to death. I can't sleep. Have you all noticed that the waves on the sea seem to have gotten bigger? The bigger the waves, the more expensive the fish brothers. Let's go fishing. Night fishing 1. 2. 10086. Have you all heard the singing? It's quite beautiful. No, don't scare me. Where would the singing come from in the sea? I saw it. It's a beautiful woman singing, so sexy, and she's waving at me. Dude, watch your sanity. That's a siren, damn it. She's so beautiful, and she's swimming over to me. Dude, quickly hide in the captain's cabin and lock the door. It's over. He's already enchanted. Dude, are you still there? It's late at night, but don't scare me. Hello. No more messages came from that person. Yang Yi frowned. This system warning was definitely not. He listened carefully, but heard no singing, then stood up and pushed open the door to the captain's cabin. The door of this ghost ship was old and decayed. The lock had long since broken and was merely decorative. He pushed it open a crack, carefully observing the outside using the moonlight to examine his surroundings. After watching for a few minutes and confirming there was no movement, he dashed out, then went to the bow, maneuvering the helm to reduce the speed to 10 knots. Reducing speed could decrease the chances of encountering monsters. If he were to encounter a monster while sleeping, it would truly be a death without knowing how he died. However, staying in one place was not a good choice either. Yang Yi thought that a speed of 10 knots was just right, keeping a distance from the black mist behind. After handling everything, he returned to the captain's cabin, placing the flintlock pistol on the bedside and leaning the spear against the wall. After continuing to observe the chat channel for a while, he slowly fell asleep late at night, with faint whispers echoing in his ears. His brow furrowed and sweat beaded on his forehead, as if he were having a nightmare. The first night at sea was destined to be sleepless. Yang Yi had lain for what felt like an eternity before finally drifting off, twisting and turning on the bed, cold sweat beading on his forehead. He was having a nightmare. Meanwhile, inside the cabin of the nightmare, the skeletal remains of the captain suddenly stirred. The bones began to tremble, and a spark of soul fire flickered to life within the shattered skull. Creak, creak. The bones clattered and ground against each other as the skeleton rose to its feet. It walked out of the cabin and slowly made its way to the captain's quarters at the bow, gently pushing open the door. Inside, Yang Yi remained deep in slumber, occasionally shifting to one side. The undead skeleton gazed at him for a long while, then its attention was drawn to a fishing rod encrusted with barnacles lying nearby. It walked over, picked up the fishing rod, and without a moment's hesitation left the room, heading to the relatively spacious central deck to start fishing. After over 10 minutes, something took the bait. A pale, bloated hand reached up from the sea, grasping the fishing. Yang Yi was still dreaming, a nightmare. He jolted awake, his hand instinctively reaching for his abdomen. Finding it unharmed, he let out a long sigh of relief. Just moments ago, he had dreamed of a swollen, drowned corpse silently pushing open the door and stepping inside. The dream was so vivid, as if seen with his own eyes. He remembered the sound of the drowned corpse moving, squelch, squelch, like a wet mop slapping against the floor. When Yang Yi awoke, the corpse was already right before him. Without a word, he grabbed the flintlock pistol by his bedside and fired at the drowned corpse. Click! The gun misfired. The next instant, the corpse pinned him to the bed, and he became a fish on a chopping board, disemboweled, his bright red organs spilling onto the floor. You experienced death, were tortured and devoured. Sanity 15. Phew. Thankfully, it was just a dream. Yang Yi exhaled deeply, but suddenly he noticed the door to the captain's quarters was open. He snatched the flintlock again. Was it the wind? Impossible, there was hardly any wind at sea today. Squelch, squelch. Familiar footsteps echoed. A bloated, drowned corpse appeared at the doorway. It seemed to have soaked in the sea for an eternity, its body swollen and reeking, clad in a sailor's uniform tattered to scraps and draped in seaweed. Now its pale white eyes fixed on Yang Yi. Fuck, you see an unknown creature. Sanity 5. Yang Yi cursed and immediately fired. Click. The gun jammed. The drowned corpse still seemed to retain some semblance of awareness. Seeing the pistol misfire, it grinned widely, revealing a mouth with few teeth from which a crab crawled out. This scene was eerily similar to the nightmare, so Yang Yi was prepared. The moment the gun failed to fire, he hurled the flintlock like a rock, striking the drowned corpse square in the head. Seizing the moment while the corpse was stunned, he grabbed a nearby spear and charged, plunging the spear into the rotting neck and smashing his body into it. But his goal was not to kill. It was to escape the captain's quarters. Only by breaking free from this cramped space and reaching the deck could he stand a chance against the drowned corpse. The momentum of his charge combined with his weight allowed Yi to squeeze past the corpse. The nauseating stench of rot nearly made him vomit. The foul odor disgusts you. Sanity 5. Yi was not strong at toppling the corpse, and crushing it was out of the question. He ran without stopping to the foredeck. Here he had enough space to maneuver. Yi looked back. As expected, the corpse was swollen and clumsy, far slower than him. I can win. Yi felt a surge of excitement, adrenaline pumping, his breath quickening. On the foredeck stood a raised platform with the ship's wheel. He only needed to emulate the ancient sages, using the tall wheel as cover to circle around, escaping the corpse's pursuit. At the same time, he began counting in his mind. 48. 47. The wooden spear had pierced the drowned corpse's neck, but it acted as if nothing had happened, still chasing him. 3. 2. Yi stopped circling, shook off the corpse, and sprinted back to the captain's quarters. He picked up the flintlock from the doorway, raised it, aimed at the corpse, and held his breath. A few meters away, the target was so fat, Yi couldn't miss. As long as it didn't misfire. Bang! The gunshot was deafening, like a shrieking wail, nauseating. The strange gunshot. Sanity 2. The shot was slightly off, but it hit. Most of the drowned corpse's head shattered, black pus spilling onto the deck. It staggered and fell forward heavily. I won. Yi's tense nerves relaxed a little. He walked toward the corpse to retrieve the spear on the ground. But just then the supposedly dead corpse stirred again. Most of its head was gone, yet it could still move. A pale, huge hand clamped onto Yi's ankle with tremendous force, digging into his flesh, leaving scratch marks. Damn, still not dead. Yi reacted instantly, a fierce glint in his eyes. He grabbed the spear and thrust it again into the corpse. This time the spear entered through the broken skull. After the strike, the corpse's grip weakened. It seemed to be working. But for some reason, in its dying moments, the corpse turned its head toward Yi, its eyes filled with pure malice. Then its abdomen began to swell rapidly. Self-destruct. Yi realized it in an instant and immediately threw himself backward. A dull boom. Foul, rotting flesh and bone fragments sprayed everywhere like a rain of blood. The drowned corpse had self-destructed, making quite a commotion. Fortunately, the corpse was lying face down, its belly against the deck, so most of the force was absorbed by the boards. Yi had fallen in time, dodging the flying debris. But his foot was unluckily injured. A sharp pain in his left foot. 2 teeth had pierced through his shoe sole and stabbed into his sole. His right arm was cut by an unidentified bone fragment, though the wound was shallow. As for the falling flesh, it had lost its lethality. It landed on Yi, merely sickening him. The corpse fragments are nauseating. Sanity 2. Yi struggled to his feet, pried the severed hand off his right ankle, and checked his condition. Status injured on the human-shaped diagram. Both left and right feet turned yellow. Sanity 55,100. Energy 40,100. Health 91,100. He took off his left shoe, gritted his teeth against the pain, and pulled out the tooth embedded in his sole. Luckily, it wasn't as powerful as a bullet. After piercing the sole, it only barely broke the skin. Otherwise, it would have been fatal. Yi stood up through the pain, looked at the drowned corpse, and drew a sharp breath. On the deck, only a mutilated skeleton remained. The entire spine was missing, presumably blown into the sea. The ribs were all lodged like arrows into the deck, buried deep in the wood. The force of the explosion had not been small. He had simply been in the direction of least impact. If he had been struck by those arrow-like ribs, the consequences would have been unimaginable. At the same time, information about the drowned corpse appeared in the log. Name drowned 1, description: an unfortunate soul who perished in the sea, risen again with resentment toward the living. Can be used in the monster gotcha machine. Monster gotcha machine. What's that? Yi was baffled. But after calming down, he noticed another blow. The drowned one had walked up to the captain's quarters just as Yi spotted it. But who had opened the door to the quarters? It was already open before the drowned one appeared. Thinking this, every hair on his body stood on end. He heard footsteps approaching from behind, and then a sharp pain in his left shoulder. Something had stabbed him. There's something on the boat. Yi reacted, but it was too late. A fishing rod thrust forward, piercing his left shoulder, going deep into the flesh. He immediately ran forward, turning his head, while pressing his right hand over the wound on his left shoulder. Before him stood a skeleton, half of its skull missing, with a ghastly green soul fire burning inside. It was the captain's skeleton. It had come to life, holding a fishing rod whose tip was stained red with Yi's blood. It stared at Yi, its jaw clattering incessantly, as if mocking him. You treacherous scoundrel. Yi cursed, his eyes blazing with fury. Yi raised his hand and fired a shot at the skeleton. Click. The gun misfired. The skeleton wielded the fishing rod like a spear and charged forward. Although Yang felt no pain, his foot injury would inevitably hinder his movements. Circling the skeleton while injured was too risky. A single misstep could see him impaled by that tonter-long fishing rod. After brief deliberation, Yang changed his tactics. Instead of retreating, he advanced directly toward it. He threw the spear in his hand, striking the skeleton squarely and lodging it in its bones, leaving it briefly stunned. Seizing the opportunity, he closed in for close-quarters combat. He still had one more weapon, a blunt one at that. By gripping the flintlock's barrel, he turned the gun into a short hammer exceptionally effective against skeletons. He raised the flintlock high and smashed it toward the crack in the skeleton's skull, aiming for its soul fire. But the skeleton reacted quickly, immediately reaching out to block. It seemed terrified of the gun, even abandoning its fishing rod to grab at it with both hands. Yang naturally refused to let go. They began a wrestling match over the weapon. The skeleton's strength was slightly below that of Yang in his frenzied state, likely a 4. But under the grapple, Yang struggled to land an effective blow. If the gun accidentally went off and hit him, he would be doomed. He had to come up with a plan. Despite his frenzied state, Yang remained clear-headed and soon devised a solution. It wanted the flintlock, didn't it? Then let it have it. Yang timed his move, continued grappling for a while, then aimed carefully and pulled the trigger. Click! The gun misfired. He then deliberately let go of the weapon. As expected, the skeleton's attention was entirely on the flintlock. Yang successfully broke free and ran toward the cabin. When the skeleton arrived, it saw only a dim silhouette in the cabin. It was Yang standing in the darkness, holding a mass of unknown flesh in his hands and devouring it ravenously. The skeleton pulled the trigger, but the gun gave no response. It was still on cooldown. From bow to stern was only a dozen meters, and both had run that distance, so the flintlock remained in cooldown. A pistol that can't fire is no better than a hammer. Yang charged forward, his mouth smeared with black slime, his eyes bloodshot. Thus Yang strength increased from 3 to 6, a full doubling. Moreover, Yang realized that the strength in these stats didn't grow linearly, but exponentially. That meant having 2 more points of strength allowed for easy domination. Yang closed in. At that moment, the skeleton hadn't reacted, yet seemingly puzzled as to why the gun wouldn't fire. The next second, Yang tackled it to the ground, wrenched off both arm bones, and flung them aside. Yang pressed his advantage, thrusting his right hand through the skull's opening to grab the soul fire inside. Only then did the skeleton show some fear, its jaw clattering, as if begging for mercy. But it was too late, it had no means to resist. Yang grasped the flame. It wasn't hot, but rather, the skeleton reacted violently, trembling all over, then quickly collapsed into a pile of ordinary bones. The soul fire extinguished completely. But was the skeleton truly dead? Not necessarily. Having been tricked by the drowned man earlier, he had grown much more cautious. Yang grabbed the skull, picked up the flintlock, and placed the skull on the ship's railing. He strongly suspected the skeleton wasn't dead, even though he could now inspect its information. Without a word, Yang decisively fired. Bang! Flames burst forth, and the sharp report of the gun echoed. The skull was blown to pieces by the flintlock. It seems that either subduing or killing a monster yields information about it. Yang concluded. But the monster gotcha machine. What exactly was it? Yang had never seen one, and there was none on the ship. To be safe, it was better to keep the monster corpses. Yang tossed them into the cabin, and also took the skeleton's arm and thigh bones. After all, headless skeleton soldiers might exist too. Yang had seen them in games. Just in case, it was better to take part of its body. Having learned from his mistakes, Yang now seemed to have 100 extra precautions. After hastily dressing his wounds with cloth, he returned to the captain's cabin. At the same time, he checked his own status. No wonder he was so exhausted. His energy was this low. Yang opened the world chat channel and typed a line casually. Remember to lock your doors when you sleep tonight. Soon someone replied. Big shot, what did you encounter? A sea monster. Holy crap, you didn't kill it, did you? Is it hard to beat? Does it drop loot? Yang replied grumpily. No, pure torture. He ignored whatever others replied, closed the world channel, laid down on the bed, and placed the skeleton's thigh bone under the mattress to use as a pillow. Meanwhile, he kept the gun by his side within easy reach. Tonight had been too perilous. Any mistake could lead to his utter ruin. Tomorrow he planned to set up some sound traps for early warning. If he could detect danger in advance, many perils could be. He tried to fall asleep while thinking, but until dawn arrived, he couldn't get any sleep. Yang hardly slept in the latter half of the night. Seeing dawn break, he simply got up and threw the few rotten bones under his bedding into the space beneath the bed. After all this time, the captain's skeleton should be thoroughly dead. After a night, Yang looked like a changed man. His face was pale with dark circles under his eyes and bloodshot eyes. As soon as he stepped out of the captain's cabin, he noticed a statue on the foredeck. A statue. It was a cartoonish octopus monster with wings on its back, crouching on a rock. What? At the same time, a log announcement popped up. Last night, a total of 1300 people successfully killed aberrant monsters and one person even achieved an astonishing double kill. The system will grant each of you a special talent based on your battle achievements. At the same time, the monster gacha machine is now open. You can put monster corpse tissues into the machine to obtain gacha rewards, and the corpses will be forcibly recycled. But please note, do not throw trash into the gacha machine, and especially do not put in living creatures. This will anger the gacha machine. The world channel immediately exploded with chatter. Are there monsters in this world? What are they like? Has anyone seen one? Let me go back, I'll give you anything. There's actually a talent reward. What a loss. Last night a skeleton monster banged on my door, but I didn't open it. If I had known, I would have opened and taken a gamble. If you had opened, you might have died. Monster gacha machine. Have you guys found this thing? I found it right on the foredeck. It's a big-faced cat kind of. Why is mine in the cabin? It's a cartoon robot. Damn, mine is a clown. Really scary, and it's placed in the captain's cabin. Is everyone's different? Yang Yi turned around and looked at his own gacha machine. A cartoonish octopus monster, its mouth wide open, eagerly waiting to be fed with tentacles all around its mouth. Reward issued. You have acquired the talent. Unlock conditions. Count 03. What is this? It needs to be unlocked. That's too unfair. Yang Yi opened the chat channel. Others were also asking why the gifted talent needed to be unlocked. Everyone's unlock conditions are different, with required counts varying from tens or hundreds to tens of thousands, or even millions. He only needed 3 times, which was an extremely low number. Soon someone discovered the talent unlock conditions. They were all simple tasks. My unlock condition is walking 1,000 steps. Too harsh. Yours is okay, mine is breathing 3 million times. We'll just leave it to fate. You guys at least have a target. Mine is 0-100, completely clueless. Maybe it's surviving 100 days. This system. If it doesn't want to give a talent, it might as well not. Yang Yi looked at his own 03, shook his head, and decided to leave it to fate, and ignore it for now. He walked into the cabin planning to exchange the monster corpses inside for gacha spins. The captain's skeleton could not be used for the gacha, there was only one. So he only took the drowned person's severed hand and fed it into the octopus monster gacha machine. As soon as it was inserted, the gacha machine's eyes lit up red, and the tentacles under its chin cyclically changed colors like ribbons. Yang Yi turned the dial on its chest, and the machine emitted the sound of capsules colliding. The atmosphere was charged. What a twisted sense of taste, he commented. He said. Shortly after, a glowing orb rolled out. Yang Yi picked it up, and it turned into a bottle of dark blue potion. Name: Grudge of the Drowned. Type: consumable. Quality: fine. Description: after ingestion, sanity 20, and the user will be regarded as a drowned person for 1 minute, not actively attacked by low-level aberrant monsters. Yang Yi's eyes lit up. This was actually a decent survival tool. In survival games, such items were quite valuable. The world channel also became lively, with many people showing off their prizes. I pulled a token. Name: Bone Token. Type: relic. Quality: masterwork. Description: can summon a skeleton and control it to fight for you for 15 minutes. After the time expires, it will lose control and turn to attack the summoner. Upon death, the body disappears. Cooldown: 24 hours. When using it, it's best to ensure you can defeat the skeleton. That's so strong. Sell it to me. We'll give you 100 million. What good is 100 million? Here we need shell coins, and there's no way to trade unless you meet in person. How about this dagger of mine? Name: serrated dagger. Type: treasure. Quality: masterwork. Description: a sharp dagger comfortable to hold, deals minor damage. Its only flaw is that it's short. Alright, we all know you're short. I wouldn't buy this weapon even if you sold it. Too embarrassing. Many people showed off their gacha loot, but masterwork items were rare. Only these two were seen, the rest were. Overall, relics had better effects than treasures, but they carried a risk of sanity reduction and possible side effects. The rusty flintlock pistol in Yang Yi's hand could deal moderate damage, while most other masterwork weapons only dealt minor damage. It was far more powerful. But it had big limitations. 1 shot per minute, and it could misfire, costing sanity. It was a balancing measure. Yang Yi withdrew his gaze and swallowed half of a long-legged sardine in one go. He was too hungry, and after last night's battle his scruples had diminished. To survive, these things weren't a problem. Eating raw long-legged sardine reduces sanity by 2 points. The fish was actually a bit off, but fortunately not rotten. It could provide energy and a little water. Yang Yi ate all the sardines, finally feeling a bit full, then checked his status. After resting last night, both stamina and sanity had recovered somewhat, but due to nightmares and insomnia, the stamina recovery was poor. The wounds hadn't healed well, and he wondered if they would become infected. Yang Yi. Status: injured. A human-shaped pattern with yellow areas indicating wounds. Sanity: 74100. Stamina: 52100. HP: 83100. He entered the cabin. Today's top priority was making noise traps. These aberrant monsters were not very intelligent, so the traps didn't need to be very hidden. He only needed to use the simple synthesis function to make some long ropes, then drill holes in thin wooden planks and string them together. The planks were easy to get, just take them directly. In this game, wood could be shaped into any cubic form. 1 unit was roughly equal to a cubic decimeter block of wood. After stringing the planks together, he tied knots to space them out and hung them in the corridor and on the door in front of the captain's cabin. Yang tested it. The sound difference between wind blowing and someone bumping was significant, offering some warning effect. By the time he finished, the whole morning had passed, and all the wood and cloth he had salvaged earlier were completely used up. Yang wasn't in a hurry to gather these resources. The immediate priority was still fresh water. He had to do more fishing while keeping an eye out for drifting supplies and treasure chests. Just as he was thinking, Yang suddenly felt something wrong with his body. He felt a bit hot, his face was burning, and his stomach ached. He immediately became alert and checked his status again. Yang status: injured corpse, poison, infection, mild food poisoning, mild diarrhea. His whole body turned yellow with darker spots at the wound sites. Oh no. The situation Yang least wanted to encounter had occurred. The drowned person carried corpse poison. He had been infected, but he was at sea with no medicine. The weather today is bright and sunny, perfect for fishing. Location: Sea of Origins. Remaining daylight 8 hours. Temperature 1525 C. Wind speed level 1. Yang is desperately fishing. He not only needs fresh water, but also urgently requires medical supplies. All of these can be obtained through fishing. Yang searched the World Channel and found that someone had caught ordinary quality medical bandages, which have effects of accelerating healing and reducing inflammation. Although the bandages wouldn't be very effective for Yang's current injuries, other medical supplies certainly exist. He must hurry up and fish. You caught a rotten piece of wood. You caught a long-legged sardine. You caught a long-legged sardine. You caught a piece of rotten cloth. FK. Yang cursed, angrily grabbed a long-legged sardine, bit off its head, and swallowed it whole along with its innards and long legs. He remembered that some survival expert once said that you can eat it without the head. Yang was very hungry, so he ate whatever he caught. As for whether eating long-legged sardines would lead to a decrease in sanity, that was not something he needed to consider now. He was starving. Who cared about sanity? Desperate hunger makes you eat anything. After eating too much, Yang made a new discovery. Sanity decreases would recur with the same event, but would diminish over time. For example, after eating long-legged sardines, his sanity only decreased by 1 point, occasionally 2 points. If this continued, eating such fish would become routine, and he would no longer lose sanity. Moreover, his mental experience points were rapidly increasing. The growth of his spirit should be related to the stimulation of sanity. He fished for another 2 hours. Yang felt his body getting worse. His wounds became unbearably itchy. He suppressed the itch, refusing to scratch lest he exacerbate the infection. Meanwhile, due to diarrhea, he lost a significant amount of fluids and salts. Coupled with a fever, his vision gradually became blurry, and he felt heavy-headed. Status: injured corpse, poison, infection, moderate fever, food poisoning, mild diarrhea. Just hold on a little longer. I will surely catch life-saving medicine. Yang forced himself to stay awake and continued fishing, finally catching something he had never seen before. You caught an eyeball fruit. It was an eyeball that blinked and was the size of a fist. Name: eyeball fruit. Description: although it looks strange, it is a fruit native to the abyss, slightly sweet, and can replenish vitamins, salts, and fluids. Without hesitation, Yang bit into the eyeball fruit, splattering black juice, while the fruit trembled slightly. Your sanity decreases by 2. This fruit, although terrifying, tasted far better than sardines. The flesh was grainy and slightly sweet, and Yang devoured it all. After eating the eyeball fruit, Yang felt much better. The diarrhea had basically stopped, but the corpse poison infection remained. Wasn't there a cure for corpse poison in fishing? Impossible. Fishermen can catch anything. Yet by night, he still hadn't caught any medical supplies. He did manage to catch a bottle of fresh water. Harvest as follows. Eyeball fruit x2, long-legged sardine x8, wood x10, cloth x9, cystic pufferfish x1, fresh water 1L. The rest he had eaten. This 1L of fresh water counts as 1 unit and can be stored in the cabin, but requires a container when taken out. This cabin is not a physical concept. Inside, resources such as wood, cloth, fresh water, and steel are stored as invisible data which can be retrieved. Yang was parched and had already consumed 1/3 of a 1.5L bottle of Farmer's 3 Punch. He must conserve it. The yield of fresh water is low. By night, Yang dared not linger on deck, ending his fishing and returning to the captain's quarters. As usual, he placed his flintlock beside him and lay down to sleep. But the fever and the infection constantly tormented Yang. It was destined to be a sleepless night, filled with nightmares and curses. Yang couldn't sleep, so he opened the chat channel. It was still bustling. However, observant individuals would notice that the online count was no longer displayed. The dead do not speak. Their disappearance is silent. I just made 2 spears. If the skeleton dares to come tonight, it'll make it drop gold coins. Bro, have you never played games? Do you know that skeletons have no flesh and come with piercing resistance? Using a spear is worse than throwing your fists. Pre-ordering steel, still need 982 units. Message me for specifics. Steelheart, you little brat, you're still alive. Damn it. You all are dead, but I won't die. How can you outrun the black mist with your 5 knots? Give me steel, and he'll tell you. Shut it. I don't want to know. Behind all the ships, an iron warship was racing for its life. Not far behind it, the black mist was closing in at a speed of 10 knots. The sea was filled with fish, all equally frightened of the black mist, fleeing in panic. A portly middle-aged man stood on the bridge, scruffy, smoking a cigarette and gripping the helm. Though he seemed arrogant in the chat, he was actually extremely nervous. A moment's neglect could cost him his life. Chatting was one of the few ways he could relieve his stress. His ship had ample supplies, infinite ammunition, and incredible durability, but its only flaw was its slow speed, making it likely to be caught by the black mist. Moreover, his starting position was very close to the black mist. Fortunately, there was hope. His ship was equipped with a giant harpoon gun, a type of spear that once embedded in a massive marine creature would be hard to remove. He was now looking for the next target, hoping to use such a marine giant to drag him along and increase his ship's speed. Damn it, can't this stupid fish hold on a little longer? Such poor endurance. He reeled in the harpoon, aiming for the next target, trying to pick one that swam fast and was large. Thanks to this, he had only slept 3 hours so far. The rest of the time was spent seeking targets. After all, this giant fish would bleed, tire, and die. As for the fish that dared to attack him, without looking, he would teach them what firepower suppression means and what civilized cannons are. The next day, Yang Yi struggled to wake up, his head pounding. He didn't know when he had fallen asleep, only that he had dreamed of some terrible things, feeling nauseous and wanting to vomit. This ship was worse than he had imagined. Without other means to regain energy, his gaming efficiency would be significantly reduced. After resting an entire night, his energy had only recovered by 30. Moreover, the corpse poison infection had worsened. His wounds were no longer itchy, only slightly painful, which was not a good sign. Furthermore, the wound emitted a nauseating, fishy odor reminiscent of a corpse that had been dead for a long time, akin to the smell of a drowned person. Humanity's immune system is no match for corpse poison. His attributes, including strength, agility, and constitution, had all decreased by 2, putting him in a weakened state. However, Yang Yi was not despondent. He had experienced worse situations, being bedridden for 5 years. He stepped out of the captain's quarters, went to the cabin, ate 2 eyeball fruits and a few long-legged sardines for breakfast, and then resumed fishing. Today luck was on his side. He caught an eyeball fruit right at the start. You caught an eyeball fruit. You caught a long-legged sardine. You caught a piece of rotten wood. Yang Yi suddenly blacked out and collapsed on the deck, falling into a coma. A strange voice echoed in Yang Yi's mind as he slowly regained consciousness. Day 5. Did I really faint for over 2 days? Yang Yi felt as if his limbs were filled with lead, his body cold, his lips cracked, and his throat burning with thirst. He immediately checked his status. Status: serious injury, corpse poison infection, severe, the entire body has turned red, logic 100,100 energy, 23100 vitality, 14100 below 100 indicates injury, below 50 indicates moderate injury, below 30 indicates serious injury, below 10 indicates near death. Attacks while in near-death state may result in immediate death. Yang Yi's condition was already perilously close to death. He struggled to rise, desperately dry, planning to eat something to replenish fluids before checking the trading channel to see if he could buy life-saving medicines. But just as he stood, he suddenly noticed a ship anchored beside him. It was a pirate ship flying a skull flag over 20 meters long with 2 grappling hooks securing it to the Nightmare. Moreover, a wooden plank was laid between the 2 ships, forming a narrow bridge. This is bad. Yang Yi instantly became alert, but it was already too late. An arrow flew in, striking his left arm with great force and piercing through. This arrow drained Yang Yi's vitality down to 9 points, putting him in a near-death state. He immediately fell, hiding beneath the edge of the ship. Soon sounds came from the wooden plank between the 2 ships. Someone was crossing the bridge. They must be coming to confirm Yang Yi's life or death. The arrow was not fatal, having missed the vital areas. However, Yang Yi fell quickly, and the other party likely did not see clearly and needed to come closer to confirm. Due to the rules, he could not directly board the Nightmare. Thus, he followed closely, waiting for the ship owner Yang Yi to reveal himself so he could kill him and board the ship. Yang Yi instantly grasped the situation, a fierce light flashing in his eyes. If they want to kill me, they must be prepared to be killed. There will be no complaints, he thought to himself, having made the decision to kill. Yang Yi's left arm was injured, but not painful. His right arm was fine, allowing him to aim and pull the trigger. He grasped the flintlock pistol and secretly disabled the boarding restrictions. He was certain the other party had no powerful firearms, otherwise they would have already fired. As the man boarded the ship, his first glance fell upon a person lying on the deck. The man's face was pale, his crimson eyes resembled that of a zombie, and he emanated a nauseating stench of decay. What was even more frightening was that this zombie was holding a large caliber flintlock pistol, the dark muzzle, aimed. Don't move. If you dare draw your bow or make any attack, I will immediately blow your head off. Yang Yi threatened, slowly rising from the ground. The other party was momentarily stunned by the gun pointed at him. However, in reality, Yang Yi did not dare to fire easily. After all, this gun was most threatening when it was not firing. Once he fired, there were two possibilities: the gun might misfire, or it might go off. If it misfired, Yang Yi would be doomed. If it fired, the other party would likely be blasted apart by this powerful flintlock pistol. Drop your weapon and don't make any sudden movements. Yang Yi's voice was deep and hoarse, filled with authority. The other party hesitated, frozen in place, unsure whether to drop the weapon. Yang Yi stood up nonchalantly, a strong smell of rotten sea air wafting towards him, making him feel nauseous. His left arm still had an arrow sticking out of it, yet he acted as if nothing was wrong, not even blinking as he pulled out a giant eyeball from inside his clothes and took a bite. The eyeball trembled, seemingly begging for mercy. However, Yang Yi was too thirsty to resist, and swallowed it in 3 bites. The thick, dark juice smeared all over the corners of his mouth. The other party was completely dumbfounded. Stimulated, your logic decreases by 10. He looked down and saw several rotting, long-legged sardines on the deck, a stinking cystic pufferfish, and a pile of severed sardine heads. You see some unidentified creatures showing signs of being eaten. Your logic decreases by 7. Your logic is below 30. Notification messages continued to sound, but this man was completely oblivious, while a strong sense of fear surged within him. This fear interferes with one's cognition, causing one to act erratically, suspect, and attack the weak or in the face of danger. Turn and run. The man let out a scream, startling Yang Yi and almost causing him to fire. Then he tossed away his weapon and turned to flee in panic. Yang Yi was somewhat baffled, unsure of what had driven this man mad. But he did not miss the opportunity, raising his gun to aim, and after the man had run a distance, he pulled the trigger of the flintlock pistol. Click. The gun misfired, making a sound that was hardly noticeable, and the other party remained completely unaware. Yang Yi immediately went to pick up his bow and arrows. Name: pirate longbow type, treasure quality good, description: slightly increases archery accuracy and reduces the strength required to draw the string. A good companion for pirates. Without hesitation, Yang Yi decisively jabbed the arrowhead into the cystic pufferfish, then drew the bow and aimed. Whoosh! The arrow flew out. Yang Yi's body was weak, and he could not fully draw the bowstring, resulting in poor accuracy. However, the distance between the two ships was only 3 to 4 meters, and he still hit the opponent's thigh, the wound not deep. But in reality, Yang Yi had aimed for his chest. But as long as it hit, that was enough. The other party immediately pulled out the arrow and did not linger, running straight towards the bow of the ship, as if trying to escape. Yang Yi had no intention of pursuing. Instead, he lay back down. His current state was terrible. If the other party counterattacked, it would be quite troublesome. Fortunately, the other party was terrified and fled the ship. It was not until the sound ceased that he barely managed to get up. Yang Yi now looked like a zombie, but in reality he was indeed at risk of becoming one. He felt no pain and the wound did not bleed. He only felt dizzy and slightly sluggish. He entered the cabin to replenish some fluids, consuming all the eyeball fruits, and after recovering a bit, he looked out at the sea. The other party had already gone quite far, the ship, now just a black shadow. Yang Yi maneuvered the nightmare, following at a distance. He was waiting for the other party's poison to take effect. After all, this cystic pufferfish, just by its name, indicated that it was highly poisonous. It should be a pufferfish tainted by abyssal pollution. And the toxins from pufferfish are notoriously deadly. After chasing for about 15 minutes, he caught up. He then used his grappling hooks to latch onto the opponent's ship, and upon getting closer, built a bridge with planks. It must be said that Yang Yi was in very poor condition, resting 3 to 4 times just to move the planks. After boarding the opponent's ship, Yang Yi held his flintlock pistol, remaining vigilant as he slowly approached the ship's bow deck. The other party appeared dead, lying motionless on the ground. But this could also be a ruse to make Yang Yi lower his guard. He might have an antidote. Yang Yi was highly alert, shooting at him from a safe distance of 4 to 5 meters. Click. The gun misfired, and this thing was truly frustrating. However, Yang Yi was very patient. 1 minute later, bang! The other parties had exploded into a puddle of mush. By this time, Yang Yi was finally relieved enough to approach. Once bitten by a snake, one is afraid of the rope for 10 years. After being fooled by a drowning man, Yang Yi became much more cautious. He checked the other party's corpse and found a glowing orb. You have obtained 400 seashell coins. This should be the money on the other party. Then there was the pirate outfit he wore, which was also a good item. Bloodstained, magnificent pirate outfit, type relic, quality good, description: this outfit belonged to his self. Agility 1. Wearing it will cause logic to continuously decrease. Above 8 mental state can immunize against the continuous decrease of logic. The other party likely wore this outfit, so his logic probably wasn't very high. He might have gone insane. Yang Yi accepted this clothing, planning to loot a wave on this pirate ship. But he suddenly noticed that the unlock condition for his question mark skill had changed from 03 to 13. Could my unlock condition be killing? Yang Yi was uncertain, as he did not know precisely when it had increased. Yang Yi did not suffer any psychological burden from killing for the first time. It might be due to his high spirit, which grants strong resistance. He changed into the pirate attire and walked toward the cabin of the pirate ship. This outfit feels chilly, your sanity decreases by 5. As for the continuous sanity-draining debuff, Yang Yi's high spirit allowed him to simply ignore it. Yang Yi entered the cabin and immediately obtained information about the vessel. It was a special ship. Pirate ship, level 1, durability 10001000, capacity 800 units, speed 45 knots. Ship skills, extra grappling hooks. This ship has 2 grappling hooks on each side capable of grabbing objects or other vessels. Pirate assault, increases speed by 25, lasts 15 minutes. Description: the skull flag is the soul of this ship. Strive to become the pirate king. Seizing the moment, Yang Yi tried to switch ships, but after searching through the log for a long time, he found no relevant function. It seemed he could not change vessels. Moreover, Yang Yi had no intention of switching. Although this ship was decent with 4 extra grappling hooks compared to ordinary vessels, if used skillfully, it would greatly enhance resource collection efficiency. But it could not compare to the nightmare ship. A nightmare with precognitive effects was far rarer than grappling hooks. Yang Yi searched every room in the cabin and unexpectedly discovered a female corpse. She was completely naked, had evidently suffered considerable abuse before death. A plump thigh was missing, and there were clear strangulation marks on her neck. The bloodstains were fresh, suggesting she had died not long ago. So Yang Yi was likely the second victim. The first had already perished. You ponder the whereabouts of that thigh. Sanity decreases by 2. Yang Yi frowned. The original owner's sanity level might be even lower than he had anticipated, a worrying mental state. He began to inspect the supplies he had found. They included 2 hard dry black bread loaves providing 2 days' worth of calories, fresh water 5L, timber 125, and fabric 98. System prompt: you have successfully occupied the unowned ship pirate ship. You may choose to dismantle it. Basic materials inside will be transferred to your cabin. Before dismantling, ensure your ship has sufficient capacity, otherwise excess materials may damage them. This dismantling will yield timber 100, fabric 50, and 1 pirate ship blueprint. Only dismantling special ships yields corresponding blueprints. Each ship can only be remodeled using a blueprint once. Choose carefully. This prompt only appears when dismantling a special ship for the first time. No wonder this ship had so much timber. The previous owner must have dismantled an ordinary vessel. He checked the nightmare ship. Its capacity was very small, only 400 units. Capacity 25,400. Timber 14, fabric 10, freshwater 1L, less than 1L counted as 1L. Only materials occupy ship capacity. Other items like equipment and weapons are placed freely, even on the deck. As for whether too many items would overload the ship, that would have to be tested later. Yang Yi did a quick calculation. After dismantling this ship, his own vessel would have just enough capacity to hold all the materials, and those materials would suffice to upgrade his ship to level 2, a real bargain. After a further search, having confirmed there was nothing else of value, he returned to the nightmare ship holding over a dozen simple arrows. Then Yang Yi operated the log and confirmed the dismantling of the pirate ship. Instantly, the vessel disintegrated before his eyes into scattered fragments, which then surged into the nightmare ship's hold. He now had enough resources to upgrade to a level 2 ship. But before that, there was a more urgent matter: purchasing medical supplies through the trading system to save his life. If he used up resources on the upgrade and had none left for medicine, he would be finished. Yang Yi had been closely monitoring his condition. His health had only dropped by 1 point, and the decrease was very slow. The wound had completely stopped bleeding, likely due to corpse poison. Instead, his sanity was continuously declining, already below 80. This was not caused by the pirate attire. It seemed the corpse poison was eroding his sanity. Yang Yi immediately opened the chat channel and started browsing. Selling emergency bandages, 10 conch coins, each 5 left. Name: first aid bandage. Type: consumable. Quality: common. Description: clean bandages that effectively stop bleeding and prevent wound infection. Rum also good for disinfection, 30 conch coins per bottle, only 1 left. Selling balloons. Those who know. Yang Yi skimmed quickly. Since trading had just opened, everyone had limited conch coins and prices had no benchmark. Everyone was quoting by gut feeling. Many people bartered, and some even refused conch coins, thinking it safer. Few sold resources. Timber and fabric were currently the hard currency, more popular than conch coins. Salt for sale, 100 conch coins per pack. Name: sacred salt. Type: consumable. Quality good. Description: can remove minor curses. Sprinkle it to ward off evil. You can also eat it. That wouldn't work either. He scrolled up further and finally found his target of fine quality. Limited supply of holy water, long term. PM me to trade. Name: holy water. Type: consumable. Quality fine. Description: blessed water. Can be taken internally or applied externally. Also serves as a throwable item. When facing demons, holy water is never too much. It can cure various poisons and curses, accelerate wound healing, and slightly restore energy. This was it. Yang Yi checked the tradable assets he had on hand. These included the drowning victim's wrath pirate longbow, rusted flintlock pistol, bloodstained pirate attire, barnacle-covered fishing rod, pirate ship blueprint, various resources, and 500 conch coins. If possible, he wanted to keep the weapons, pirate attire, fishing rod, and enough resources to upgrade the ship to level 2. The pirate ship blueprint could be traded, but its value was certainly very high, not suitable for selling now. After brief consideration, Yang Yi privately messaged the seller. Before adding friends, everyone was anonymous by default, but players could choose to display their real name or ship name. Yang Yi, how much? Minutes later, the other party replied. It seemed many people were contacting him. Anonymous, I need a lot of fabric. Also life-saving items, equipment, freshwater, food. These are all fine. Yang Yi frowned. Actually, having the right to set the price was disadvantageous. Offering too little would be seen as disruptive, offering too much would be a big loss. But Yang Yi's life hung by a thread, and he had no mood for haggling. He immediately offered the highest price he could accept. If it worked, trade immediately. If not, he would move on to someone else. So he sent a private message, drowning victim's wrath. Check the stats yourself, a fine quality life-saving item. Plus 400 conch coins, 30 timber, 58 fabric, 1 black bread loaf, and 4 L fresh water. He attached the stats of the drowning victim's wrath. After sending, he didn't wait for a reply and continued browsing other items. But this time the reply came quickly, within just over 10 seconds. Your offer is much more sincere than others. At the same time, a friend request arrived. Captain Zhou Dai of the Glorious Goddess ship requests to add you as a friend. Yang Yi accepted, decisively, followed by several messages. Compared to you, the others are just messing around. I have 4 bottles of holy water on hand, but judging by your condition, you're probably badly injured. 1 bottle might not be enough. So this time I'll give you 2 bottles as a welcome gift. My name is Zhou Dai, and my ship can produce holy water. We can cooperate long-term. May the goddess of glory bless you. Yang Yi could hardly believe it, even after receiving the trade request. It was all too smooth. Apparently the other party was also in dire need of a life-saving item, like the drowning victim's wrath. Moreover, she seemed quite kind, at least from this trade. Glorious Goddess ship. It seems a player's ship has some connection to their personality. On the other side, aboard the Glorious Goddess ship. It was a pure white, 3-masted sailing vessel built from sturdy white oak, looking utterly sacred. Captain Zhou Dai had golden hair and blue eyes, a tall and voluptuous figure, yet with the delicate features of an Asian, likely of mixed heritage. She was inside a special building on the ship called the prayer room, which housed the statue of the goddess of glory. The ship was only level 1. The prayer room could produce holy water, but at a very low rate. Moreover, Zhou Dai had a major problem. Undead sea spirits constantly visited the Glorious Goddess ship, especially at night. So every night she could only hide in the prayer room. A life-saving item like the drowning victim's wrath was exactly what she needed. As long as she had a means of survival, she would have enough time to retreat into the prayer room. The transaction was swiftly completed. He only needed to confirm the items in the log and lock it in. Then tossing the trade goods into the monster gacha machine would send them directly to the other party's ship. There was no need to worry about the other party defaulting. The gacha machine guaranteed the deal. Generally, things like the gacha machine with their entirely different art style were considered out-of-realm bosses, and one would be wise not to test their might. Yang Yi threw the agreed-upon items into the machine. The system automatically deducted the supplies from the ship's hold. Soon 2 bottles of holy water were spat out by the monster gacha machine. They were pure colorless liquids stored in reagent bottles. Yang Yi opened one, sniffed it. No smell, then drank it all in one gulp. Immediately his body felt as if it were on fire, an unbearable burning pain coursing through him, even emitting a charred odor. Yet his mental state greatly improved, leaving him feeling refreshed and clear-headed. It works. Yang Yi rejoiced as he checked his status. The corpse poison infection had reduced to moderate, and his blood energy began to slowly rise. So he drank another bottle to consolidate the effect. Then he spent 50 conch coins to buy 5 first aid bandages. These were presumably made of cloth, but Yang Yi had no recipe for them, so he had no choice but to purchase. He pulled the arrow from his left arm, the pain making him grimace. But the pain was a good sign. It meant the corpse poison was weakening. After cleaning the wound with a small amount of fresh water, Yang Yi bandaged himself, and then checked his status panel again. Yang Yi. Status: injured, corpse poison infection mild, improving, a human silhouette diagram, pale yellow with slightly darker colors at wound sites. Sanity 93,100. Energy 35,100. Blood energy 19100, slowly recovering. He let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, he had survived. With the remaining supplies, he could also upgrade the nightmare. He decisively did so. You have sufficient materials. Are you sure you want to upgrade? Yang Yi clicked confirm. The nightmare emitted a ghastly green light, as if spectral wraiths were swirling around the ship, and the hull began to extend outward. Upgrade complete. The nightmare has been upgraded to a level 2 vessel. Check the ship interface for specific changes. Navigation bulletin: the number of level 2 ships has exceeded 10,000. The Ocean of Origins is about to witness new changes. In 3 days, an unprecedented storm will descend upon these waters. All players be prepared. As soon as the announcement was made, the chat channel erupted into chaos. 10,000 level 2 ships. Damn, I'm still short 8 timber. Anyone selling timber? Guys, does anyone get it? After all this, I'm still stuck in a rat race. I'm paying top dollar for timber and cloth. PM me if you're selling. A frenzy of upgrades swept the channel, driving timber and cloth prices sky high. But those who suffered the most were the special ships that needed extra materials to upgrade. The Steel Ambition, trading fish for steel. PM me if interested. Long-term supply of fresh fish. Don't buy from him. His fish tastes like gunpowder. Disgusting. Just answer me this: is it fresh or not? Guaranteed caught and sold on the spot. Anyone got low-grade wind essence? Name your price. The speaker was the Swift Gale. Yang had him as a friend, so the channel was no longer anonymous. Selling organic cucumbers, organic cabbage, organic apples, organic bananas. Rich in vitamins and water. You know what I mean. Also buying seeds at high prices. Where did you get fruits and vegetables? Does your ship have farmland? You caught me. He appended his ship info. Farmer level 1, a durability 600600, capacity 1000 units, speed 25 knots. Hull skill: efficient farming. The ship has soil, harvest time varies by seed. Description: a farmer. No, now you call me daddy. Yang was surprised. He hadn't expected a ship capable of farming. This was truly a downpour of wealth. Every special ship had its own unique advantage. Yang glanced at the blueprint in his hand. This thing was definitely a treasure. Name: pirate. Blueprint type: blueprint. Quality: special. Description: transform your ship into the pirate. It will gain greater speed, more grappling hooks, and even cannons. Yang hadn't seen any cannons on the pirate. They were likely unlocked after upgrades. And as he suspected, using the blueprint consumed no materials. This meant that using the blueprint on a higher level base ship would yield enormous dividends. For example, a level 3 base ship using the blueprint would become a level 3 special ship, saving a significant amount of upgrade materials. The higher the level, the greater the savings. So the blueprint's value wouldn't crash even in the late game. He then checked his own ship interface. Nightmare level 2, durability 600600, capacity 1000 units, speed 50 knots. Hull skills. Nightmare sleep quality aboard is extremely poor, causing nightmares and reducing energy recovery efficiency by 75. Curse of the Angler: normal fish have no affinity for this ship. The probability of encountering abnormal things increases. Description: the ship has grown larger, but it doesn't change the fact that it's old and battered. The hull durability had doubled, but it was still too low to withstand much trouble. The ship had extended to 20 meters in length, and at the bow a skeleton was bound with rusty chains, the remains of the previous captain. Inside the cabin, a new expandable room had appeared with 3 branching paths to choose from. 1. Extra cargo hold increases ship capacity by 100. Requires 300 units of timber. 2. Ancient combat room provides 2 submerged cannons for attacks, requires 200 units of timber, 10 units of steel, 10 units of sulfur. 3. Great statue deters passing ships and instills panic, requires 300 units of timber, 300 units of cloth, and the bones of a demon. After brief consideration, he set his goal on the ancient combat room. Nothing made him feel safer than naval combat was inseparable from cannons. His current supplies were as follows. Capacity 111,000. Timber 9, cloth 0, freshwater 2L, less than 2 liters counted as 2L. Steel and sulfur seemed to be high-level resources, he hadn't seen them yet. The upgrade interface for level 3 ships wasn't available, yet it would probably unlock after the expansion was complete. After handling everything, he began to fish. He still needed to stock up on food. Dozens of nautical miles behind the Nightmare, there was a special ship about 10 meters long, yet atop it sat a colossal crystal ball, over 3 meters in diameter. Astrologer level 1, a durability 500500, a capacity 800 units, speed 50 knots. Hull skills. Astrology displays the chart of surrounding seas within 100 nautical miles, showing ship names. Peep shows the image of a selected ship on the chart, cannot view islands, limited to 1 target per day. Description: just revealing the map, not cheating. The captain was a beautiful woman with black hair and brown skin, her eyes a rare crimson. She had already noticed the Nightmare earlier. After all, 2 ships sailing side by side was quite unusual. Later something changed. The pirate's icon suddenly vanished from the chart. It got taken out. The woman gazed at the crystal ball before her, no larger than a palm, which displayed the chart of the nearby waters, including ship names. She reached out to manipulate it using the peep skill to view the image of the Nightmare. She saw Yang on board. A long-legged sardine was caught before it even hit the deck. It went straight into Yang Yi's mouth. The woman's crimson eyes went wide with shock and disbelief. Soon another eyeball was reeled in and promptly eaten. Finally, a cystic pufferfish was tossed aside in disgust by the man. But the woman's eyes lit up at the sight of this highly venomous fish. How does he manage to catch such treasures? She muttered enviously. She didn't lose any sanity. Instead, she grew curious, for she possessed a special talent. Talent. Witch's blood, you thirst for knowledge. Your crimson eyes are both your proof and your birthright curse. Mental limit 2. Your resistance to bizarre creatures and phenomena is high. But remember, those who touch forbidden things shall be driven out by holy light and scorched by sacred flames. Bang, bang, bang. Gunshots rang out one after another, but each sound was slightly different. Yang Yi was practicing his marksmanship. This flintlock was unreliable, so he had to improve his accuracy to compensate for this flaw. A piece of wood was hung at the stern while Yang Yi stood at the bow to shoot. There was a 1-minute interval between each shot. Misfires were fine, since it was just practice. A fishing rod was placed beside him, and he occasionally glanced at the sea surface to see if anything was caught. After a whole morning, he had only hit a dozen or so shots, still miles away from being a sharpshooter. Yang Yi ate a long-legged sardine. He had now gotten used to it, and found that the long-legged sardine had an excellent texture, especially its 4 long legs, crispy and tasting like chicken. One more day until the storm that the system had mentioned would arrive. Yang Yi had stockpiled 10 eyeball fruits, 1 loaf of black bread, 6 liters of fresh water, and over a dozen long-legged sardines. During this time, he also caught a big one, a full half-meter long. Name: red lip, eel-type food description: a fine fiery red lip, but unfortunately attached to a fish mouth. Do you want to have a passionate kiss with it? An abyssal fish species, edible, non-toxic, with tender lips. The sudden appearance of this fish had really startled him. Eating this fish raw meant he would inevitably have to gnaw on that fiery red lip, which even Yang Yi found hard to bring himself to do, unless he was truly starving. Looking at that fiery red lip, Yang Yi recalled last night's nightmare. The dream was still vivid. In it, a woman with red eyes pointed a gun at his head. Those bright red eyes sent chills down his spine. Your heart trembles. Sanity decreased by 8. That woman's gun was also familiar to Yang Yi. It was his own flintlock, but somehow it had ended up in her hands. Recalling it truly sent waves of fear through him. As a result, Yang Yi hadn't slept well again, with dark circles under his eyes. Fortunately, the corpse poison in his body had been neutralized, and his wounds were about 70 to 80% healed. His health was at 76, but his energy recovered too slowly. He slept the whole night, but only recovered about 30 energy, severely limiting his daytime activities. Continuing like this was absolutely not feasible. He needed to find a way to quickly restore energy to offset this drawback. For instance, holy water had the effect of restoring energy, but it was too expensive, and its recovery effect was weak. As he was pondering, he suddenly received an anonymous message. Look to the upper right, there's an island. Who are you? Yang Yi replied, but the other party didn't respond. In this world, to privately message someone, you at least needed to know the other's ship name. If it wasn't a special ship, you also needed their name. But Yang Yi had never voluntarily revealed his information. How did this person know? Could it be that they had an external cheat? After thinking for a while, he reached 2 conclusions. 1. The other party might have a special skill that allowed them to see him and learn his ship name, and this person wasn't far away. 2. This was a special mission from the system. He circled his ship, but saw no suspicious vessel. To the upper right, however, there indeed was an island. It was not large, with a hint of green suggesting there should be trees on it. These trees could likely be cut down for lumber. Moreover, there might be other games on the island. If he had discovered it himself, he would probably go ashore to check it out. But since someone had alerted him, he became hesitant. Ultimately, Yang Yi decided to circle the island first and observe. If there were no signs of other ships or player activity, he would choose a suitable spot to go ashore. The gun in his hand gave him confidence. At this stage, almost no players had guns, at least not seen in the chat channel. As the ship approached, Yang Yi saw the full view of the island. It was a tropical island about 3 kilometers in diameter, not large. The edge was a golden beach with some shells and crabs moving about. In Yang Yi's eyes, these were all protein. But what attracted Yang Yi the most were the coconut trees on the island. The tallest one had a bronze treasure chest hanging on it. Moreover, there were no signs of players landing on the island. These coconuts had not been touched. After hesitating for a moment, Yang Yi decided to go ashore. He chose a suitable spot to anchor, then approached the shore and disembarked. As soon as he stepped onto land, Yang Yi felt a sense of surreal separation. It had only been a few days at sea. He gathered some food on the beach, such as green crabs, clams, and scallops. Name: green crab type food description: a common crab, pure and pollution-free, with plump and delicious meat. Name: clam type ingredient description: a common shellfish, edible, can be made into delicious clam soup. Name: scallop type food description: if you have minced garlic and vermicelli, roasting a few will leave you wanting more. Yang Yi picked up a bunch and tossed them into the cabin to eat later. The main event was still to come, a cluster of verdant coconut trees. These trees were generally 7 to 8 meters tall, with the tallest reaching over 10 meters laden with heavy coconuts. They were an important source of fresh water long-lasting, and the coconut meat provided dietary fiber. And they tasted good. They were treasures that once encountered absolutely could not be missed. But Yang, he wasn't good at climbing trees. A careless fall could break his leg, or even his spine. He had no healing methods, so he couldn't take that risk. Shooting the tree down would be convenient, but the noise would be too great, and it would be bad if there were monsters on the island. He walked around the tree, and some stones of various sizes caught his attention. Name stone type resource description can be collected as stone material for crafting. If it's a large stone, you'd better have a pickaxe. Yang Yi directly picked up a bunch of medium-sized stones and placed them on the shore. Then he swam back to the nightmare, adjusted its position, and used a grapnel to haul them aboard. After 2 trips, he had collected 25 units of stone. Making a simple stone axe required 5 units of stone and 5 units of wood. This was a crafting function built into the log, allowing the creation of the most basic tools, including fishing rods, spears, bows, arrows, etc. The quality would certainly be poor. After all, they didn't even display stats, even inferior to ordinary equipment. He carried a stone axe off the ship and headed toward the tallest coconut tree. It bore over a dozen large coconuts and a bronze treasure chest. This was the first tree he planned to take down. The navigation log provided a multitude of conveniences, yet without it this world was virtually indistinguishable from reality. Chopping trees, for instance, was both a laborious task and a technical skill, especially when the stone axe was far from sharp, sending jarring vibrations through the hand. After felling the largest coconut palm, Yang Yi's energy dropped by 13 points, leaving only 30. At full capacity, he could chop down at most 5 or 6 trees. Any more would risk his energy dipping below 30, leading to fainting. Once the tree fell, Yang Yi immediately went to gather the coconuts, and as he picked one up, joy spread across his face. Name vitality coconut type food description: a rare and special coconut rich in vitamins and minerals. Its milk enhances the rate of energy recovery. Without a second thought, Yang Yi cracked open a coconut and drank heartily, gaining a buff that accelerated energy recovery. This was exactly what he urgently needed. This haul had proven immensely rewarding. He opened the bronze chest and several orbs of light tumbled out. Upon touching them, they transformed into name vitality coconut refresher formula type recipe quality fine description. Upon use, grants the recipe for vitality coconut refresher, requiring a reagent vial, salt, and vitality coconuts. Name edible sea salt 500 G type food description: a seasoning that enhances flavor and replenishes salt. Name reagent stand type tool quality fine description: an indispensable tool for preparing various reagents, can be synthesized from crystals. It can provide reagent vials. Once the reagent is consumed, the vial disappears. This single chest contained not only the recipe, but also the other 2 ingredients required for it. Yang Yi rejoiced, immediately used the recipe, and began crafting vitality coconut refresher. Required ingredients: vitality coconut 1, salt 10 G. Essential tool reagent stand. Yang Yi produced 1 bottle. Name vitality coconut refresher type consumable quality fine description: a beverage that invigorates the restores 10 energy and increases energy recovery speed by 50 for 8 hours. Effective once every 24 hours. Yang Yi grinned, turned his gaze to the coastline laden with coconuts, and twirled his axe with flourish. Since his energy was nearly at 30, he lay down on the beach to rest, waiting to recover before continuing to fell trees. By evening, he had chopped down 4 trees, obtaining 38 vitality coconuts and 43 units of timber, all of which he transported back to the nightmare. Depending on the tree's thickness and height, felling it yields 515 timber. Giant trees yield even more. He decided not to leave just yet, planning to spend the night aboard the ship and continue chopping the next day. But before returning, he made a new discovery. On the beach, a glistening trail stretched for over 100 meters from where Yang Yi stood. As the sky darkened, these traces began to emit a faint luminescence, catching his attention. The trail led straight into the island's interior. The glowing substance was a foul-smelling mucus shed by some creature. He followed the path a couple of steps inland. Away from the surf, the marks became even clearer. Their shape suggested a serpentine animal that had slithered along the ground. Yang Yi measured with his palm. The snake was at least half a meter thick, a formidable size. It was indeed wise not to use the gun. He changed his mind about spending the night on the shore and decided to move farther away for the island harbored. Some large creature. He gripped his flintlock, scanned his surroundings warily, and retreated. Only after returning to the nightmare did he let out a long sigh of relief. Sitting in the captain's quarters, Yang Yi pondered for a while. Despite the risks, he resolved to gather more vitality coconuts. Such a resource was rare and could mitigate the nightmare's drawbacks. He could not afford to let it slip away. The islands ahead might not have such coconuts. He piloted the nightmare away from the island, anchoring about 20 nautical miles offshore. At that distance, the island was no longer visible. Even if the unknown creature could swim, it would be unlikely to venture so far, just to eat a few morsels of his flesh. Wasn't it more enticing to feast on the fish in the sea? He drank a bottle of Vitality coconut refresher, ate a few scallops of glowberry, and half a red lip eel. Before sleeping, he held his flintlock in his right hand, letting it hang beside the bed with his finger off the trigger. This was his latest trick, enabling him to raise the gun and shoot any monster at the door with lightning speed. He soon fell asleep and began to have nightmares. In the dead of night, a captivating woman's voice drifted from outside the ship, ethereal and melodious like a heavenly sound. But this was the sea. Where could a woman be singing? Yang sat up groggily, his eyes vacant, drawn in by the enchanting song, losing control of himself. A look of infatuation spread across his face as he stared at the captain's doorway. There stood a humanoid creature, half-human, half-fish, resembling the legendary mermaid, with flowing golden hair and a bewitching, alluring figure. She was drenched as if fresh from a bath, her chest covered by 2 large shells. Her waist was slender, and below her navel fine scales began to appear with a fishtail for her lower half. Such a creature was commonly called a mermaid. But at sea she bore another name, the siren, the nightmare of sailors' pack. The siren sang, smiling seductively at Yang. The noise trap at the door was triggered, clinking and clattering. But Yang had already lost control, rendering the trap utterly useless. With a face full of obsession, he walked toward the siren, still clutching the flintlock in his hand. Bewitched by the enchanting song, you lose control of your body, sanity decreases by 10. You behold an extraordinarily beautiful woman, your heart and soul surrender, sanity decreases by 7. About 50 nautical miles from the nightmare, another ship drifted, the astrolabe, which had been tailing him. Captain Suna sat in her quarters writing in a small booklet. He can eat those bizarre foods without batting an eye, and he even kisses eels without hesitation, eating the red lip eel. More importantly, he shows no signs of going mad at all. This is utterly incredible. The booklet was titled Observation Journal of XXX, and since she didn't know Yang-Yi's real name, she had left the name blank. It recorded Yang-Yi's private details, including how long he slept when he woke, what he fished, what he ate. This behavior was no different from a stalker. In a normal society, she would certainly be labeled a dangerous person, locked up and subjected to re-education. Isn't he afraid? Suna chewed on her pen cap, deep in thought. The information about this island had been provided by her precisely to see how this man would react. But just then on the sea chart, the nightmare suddenly moved, racing at full speed toward the island. Strange occurrences must have a reason. Suna had been spying on Yang-Yi for days using the astrolabe's scrying skill, and she knew he was cautious, never venturing into danger at night, let alone going ashore after dark. She immediately used her scrying skill to track the nightmare. Is that a siren? Suna exclaimed, her eyes blazing with a mix of fervor and delight. Yang-Yi had a nightmare. In his dream, he saw 3 extraordinarily beautiful women forming a circle, silently gazing at him. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted dramatically as one woman took out an object and began to gnaw at it, chewing carefully, with blood dripping from the corners of her mouth. Yang-Yi was momentarily dazed, but upon closer inspection, he realized that it looked like his own right arm. Moreover, he could now clearly see the appearance of these women. Although their upper bodies were human from the waist down, they had fish scales, and further down their forms transformed into fish tails. His own arm had already been severed, and a sharp pain surged through him. Damn it! Yang-Yi was jolted awake by the excruciating pain, finding himself completely naked lying on a slick floor. The lighting here was dim, suggesting it was some sort of cave with walls and floors covered in a glowing liquid, as if some mollusks had crawled over, leaving behind their slimy residue. He was covered in a thick layer of this substance, which when he sniffed invigorated his senses, making him forget about food for 3 days. He immediately looked to his right. Thankfully, his right arm was intact. The source of the pain was a woman who was fiercely biting into Yang-Yi's arm with her sharp teeth, sinking in 3 inches deep, causing him to grimace in agony. Let go. Are you a dog? Why are you biting me? Yang-Yi shouted angrily. Upon hearing his voice, the woman finally released her grip, leaving 2 deep bite marks on his shoulder. Awake. I thought you hadn't woken up yet. The woman said, her crimson eyes dripping with allure. I'm sitting up now, do you think I'm still asleep? Yang-Yi replied, irritably rubbing his right arm as if it had been hurt by the bite. He scrutinized the woman. She had a typical Asian face, quite beautiful, with a slender figure that appeared somewhat malnourished, and her skin was an enticing wheat color. She was bound by a bundle of unknown aquatic plants with traces on the ground indicating the effort she had put into crawling over. Who are you? Yang-Yi asked, his head pounding. You were enchanted by a sea demon, and I saved your life, the woman reminded him. Hearing this, Yang-Yi immediately checked his activity log. It displayed a series of enchantment notifications. His rationality was also at a delicate numerical level. Rationality, 51,100. These sea demons actually didn't devour you for 3 days and kept you plump. It's truly a miracle. Yang-Yi understood. I was captured by sea demons and 3 days have already passed. Exactly. Not just one sea demon. Yes, there are a total of 3, They are likely a social species adept at enchanting men with their songs as mating targets. And food. Yang Yi looked at his body, realizing he was completely unclothed, and felt a chill run down his spine. Not far away lay the scattered remains of pirate clothing and a rusty flintlock. They are legendary fantastical creatures, but they truly exist in this world, and their habits are similar to the legends. The woman continued, seemingly fascinated by the sea demons. Yang Yi, however, felt a wave of dread, and quickly donned the pirate clothing, grabbing the flintlock from the ground. Wearing the blood-stained pirate clothing, he inexplicably felt a chill, and his rationality decreased. This slime is so disgusting. Why would sea demons secrete slime? In the sea, many soft-bodied or scaleless creatures secrete slime for protection, so it's normal for sea demons to have slime. Moreover, this slime glows in the dark, attracting prey similar to the anglerfish's lantern, helping to showcase their alluring figures and thus aid in the entire hunting process. The woman noticed Yang Yi's confusion and began to explain the rationale, mixed with her personal views on the sea demons. Are you a player? How did you end up here? Yang Yi suddenly asked. This woman had an unknown background, exuding an eerie aura, especially those bright red eyes, which were exactly like the ones he had seen in his nightmare. This heightened Yang Yi's wariness. Although the other party seemed harmless, perhaps even trying to save him. My name is Suna, a passing player unfortunately captured by sea demons and became emergency reserve food. But didn't you say the sea demons target only men? How could they capture you? Yang Yi inquired. Suna was prepared with an explanation. She did not intend to tell the truth, but instead gestured to a corner. I'm not alone, and my companions have already been eaten by the sea demons. But for some reason they didn't eat you, Suna explained. Yang Yi followed her gaze. There lay an incomplete male corpse, already decomposed, with its abdomen opened, intestines removed, and a face contorted in agony. It seemed the man had suffered inhuman torture while alive. Nearby the corpse were numerous human bones picked clean, showcasing the ferocity of the sea demons. But did Suna truly know that man? Not at all. She was merely using that corpse to spin a lie, making her capture seem more reasonable. Suna had come alone, tailing Yang Yi and the sea demons. She had been mesmerized by the sea demons and was suddenly ambushed by two who appeared behind her. She had initially thought only one sea demon was present. As for that corpse, the man had already been there before Yang Yi arrived. However, after Yang Yi arrived, the man seemed to have lost his value and was devoured by the sea demons. Thus, Suna didn't know who that poor man was or where he came from. After hearing Suna's words, Yang Yi believed her partially, but still remained cautious. You said 3 days have passed, but why don't I feel hungry at all? Yang Yi asked. He checked his status and found that except for low rationality, all other stats were nearly maxed out. Suna gestured to another corner. There lay a large marlin, a fierce fish from the sea with a sharp upper jaw as pointed as a spear. However, this marlin was already dead with signs of bites on its body. It seemed that during this time Yang Yi had survived by eating this marlin. But what about water? Don't I need to drink water? Yang Yi, without any memory of the past 3 days, felt confused, as if it were all unreal. On the other side, Suna grew anxious. Can you help me get untied first? In half an hour, those sea demons, I don't want to miss this opportunity. Suna reminded him. So far she had still been bound, able to only squirm. She had observed the sea demons for 3 days, learning their habits before daring to crawl over and attempt to wake Yang Yi. But Yang Yi's gaze toward her was quite complex. This woman was very clever and seemed to harbor no ill intentions. However, the more she appeared, so the more wary Yang Yi became, feeling that this woman was not simple. She was too calm. If it were someone else tied up with their life hanging by a thread, how could they speak so smoothly? Moreover, she had appeared in his nightmare. Nightmares foretell that this woman would aim a gun at his head, wanting to kill him. Thus Yang Yi felt very conflicted, unsure whether to save her. But to kill someone who meant him no harm, and even showed some kindness, he couldn't bring himself to do it. After pondering for a moment, Yang Yi finally made a decision. He felt this woman was definitely hiding something from him, and decided to probe her first, regardless of whether she had any real value. Yang Yi's gaze turned cold as he looked at Suna, pointing the dark muzzle of the gun at her threateningly, saying, Woman, 3 sentences, give me a reason not to kill you. Suna's pupils constricted violently, seemingly unable to comprehend Yang Yi's thought process. What are you saying? Has your brain been eaten by the sea demons? I have a gun in my hand. Yang Yi replied with a smile, waving the gun, as if he were a lawless bandit. He raised a finger to remind her. That's the first sentence, you have 2 more. You better seize the opportunity. The dark muzzle, silent and oppressive, filled the atmosphere with tension. After several seconds, a hint of panic appeared on Suna's face, as if she felt regret or annoyance. Her words quickened. I can give you all my resources and equipment, including food on the ship. Not enough. If I kill you, these will naturally belong to me. Yang Yi shook his head. Suna's breathing quickened, her gaze darting. After several seconds, she revealed her secret. I can provide you with a nautical chart, making your journey much safer. A nautical chart. My ship is called the Astrolabe. It can display nautical charts of nearby waters. I see. Yang Yi's smile was chilling. You lured me here, didn't you? He calmly reached into the pocket of his pirate coat and pulled out a piece of parchment. You probably haven't seen this before, right? This is a ship blueprint. By killing the ship's owner, you can dismantle its special ship and obtain it. Tell me, why wouldn't I kill you and then claim your ship's skills for myself? Suna's face turned pale. This was the first time she had heard of the existence of ship blueprints. Moreover, she knew Yang Yi was not lying. That pirate ship had indeed been taken down by him. Finally, she showed an expression of unwilling anger, her face devoid of calmness, glaring fiercely at Yang Yi. You are truly greedy and despicable. I spit on you. Go ahead and shoot. I will curse you at the end. After saying this, she closed her eyes, waiting for Yang Yi to pull the trigger. You do have some guts, I'll grant you that, Yang Yi said coldly. Suna trembled slightly. Yet after a long wait, no pain or gunshot came. She opened her eyes to see Yang Yi had found a sharp, broken bone among the pile of bones approaching her. Hand over half the supplies on your ship and provide me with a month's worth of nautical charts, and I will save you, Yang Yi said seriously. Suna's face first showed surprise, then anger. She realized Yang Yi was intentionally trying to deceive her. Immediately she became furious and shouted, What if I refuse? I have a gun, and you have no choice but to agree. Yang Yi waved his gun again, adopting a victorious posture. Suna had no choice in the matter. Suna had no choice but to reluctantly agree to Yang Yi's terms. Yet she felt no distress whatsoever, for the supplies on her vessel amounted to merely 8 units of timber, 5 units of fabric, and 4 liters of fresh water. Dividing half of that to Yang Yi was utterly inconsequential. Her ship, the Astrologer, was peculiar in that it required no timber or fabric for upgrades, but instead demanded 100 crystals and 50 steel ingots. Hence, timber and fabric held little value for her, having long been exchanged for food and water. Of course, she would not willingly confess to Yang Yi that she was destitute. On the contrary, she eagerly anticipated witnessing the expression that would dawn on his face. Yang Yi remained utterly oblivious, convinced that he had successfully extorted a hefty sum from her. After all, information asymmetry prevailed. He had no inkling of Suna's impoverished state. Using a fractured bone, he sliced through the seaweed, binding Suna, granting her freedom. But she had been restrained for so long, compounded by days without sustenance, rendering her exceedingly frail. She could not rise for a considerable time. Yet her subsequent actions left Yang Yi utterly astounded. What are you doing? He inquired, bewilderment coloring. Suna was gathering the viscous mucus on the ground into a small mound with her hands, then opening her mouth to inhale it. This secretion was notoriously foul and putrid. I am thirsty. The mucus secreted by the sea demon can provide me with moisture, salt, and some nutrients. Suna stated flatly, her brow furrowed. The mucus was evidently far from palatable, yet she suppressed her revulsion and refrained from spitting it out. Are you not afraid this mucus might be poisonous? Yang Yi inquired. Not at all. You have consumed it for 3 days and shown no sign of poisoning. Yang Yi was rendered speechless, convinced that this woman before him was decidedly unhinged. After replenishing her fluids, Suna appeared considerably revitalized. She produced a small knife from within her clothing, crouched low, approached the massive marlin carcass, slit the skin, and carved several slices of fresh flesh, which she chewed and swallowed. This blade was also an item of equipment. Name: witch's dagger. Type: treasure. Quality: fine. Description: a dagger favored by witches, boasting many functions, including the ability to slit open your belly. Can inflict minor damage upon aberrant fiends. As Suna gradually regained her strength, Yang Yi began to survey the cavern. The space was not vast, with only a single passage leading to the outside world, whence came the sound of drizzling rain and sighing wind. Within the cave lay a pool of water, its depths unfathomable, likely connected to the sea. He inspected the male corpse, concluding that it had been dead for some time. He patted the body, but found nothing of value. The pool, the entrance. Which way do the sea demons usually return? Yang Yi asked Suna. Either is possible, she replied. Do they move together? No. Suna had observed this group of sea demons for 3 days and grasped some patterns. They typically operate in 2 groups. The larger one acts alone, while the 2 smaller ones, each about 1.4 meters in length, usually move together. I see. So which returns first, the large one or the small ones? Either is possible. There is no fixed pattern, but the interval between their returns is brief, about 15 minutes. Yang Yi nodded, having roughly understood the situation. If the 3 sea demons habitually acted together, the best course would be to flee. After all, engaging 3 sea demons in frontal combat was far too risky. But if it were 2, victory was attainable. Can you hold off one? Yang Yi asked. If it is a small one, I should manage. I have fought them before. Suna's voice came. Having replenished salt and water and ingested fish, she gradually recovered. It was evident that her physical condition was not poor. Indeed, it might even surpass Yang Yi's. The sea demon's primary weapon is its song, but its song has no effect on females. Moreover, their upper body strength is unimpressive, comparable to that of an ordinary woman with power around 4, similar to mine. In combat on land, one only needs to evade their claws and teeth. Suna explained. She bore several lacerations on her body, though none were deep, presumably inflicted by the sea demon's claws. I was unaware that there were 3 sea demons initially, otherwise they would not have captured me. You have a gun which is more than sufficient to deal with them. Just plug your ears and fire swiftly. Suna was unaware that Yang Yi's gun could misfire, thus she perceived no difficulty. Yang Yi had no intention of explaining, revealing his weakness voluntarily was not in his nature. He began to inspect his own attribute panel. Yang Yi. Status healthy, a humanoid figure in the shape of a D, entirely green. Power 3 4950. Spirit 71, 892, 8000, talent bonus. Agility 41 69,100, pirate attire bonus. Physique 4 4100. Perception 5 32,200. Sanity 50,100. Energy 92,100. Vitality 99100, reduced by 1 after Suna bit him. He had already discerned the conditions for increasing each attribute. Engaging in physical exercise and movement could augment experience in power, physique, and agility. Sustaining injury and recovering could grant additional physique experience. Fluctuations in sanity, especially dramatic shifts followed by recovery, could significantly boost spirit experience. Activities such as fishing, shooting, and using grappling hooks could enhance perception experience. The methods of improvement were remarkably realistic. Combining this with Suna's intelligence, sea demons on land had mediocre combat prowess with power only around 4, and they did not all move together. Thus, if he could quickly raise his power to 4, coupled with the boost from frenzied strength 2, he could achieve dominance over the sea demons. After all, they were creatures of the sea, though on land their agility was surely low. The only thing to watch out for was their fish tail, which must be formidable. He must avoid being struck in a vital area. Having reasoned this out, Yang Yi immediately took action. A bit of experience should be easy to gain. He scanned the cavern for a suitable heavy object for exercise. But at first glance, he found none. The cave was bare, consisting only of stone walls and lightweight bones. Yet his mind was agile and unconstrained, and he quickly turned his attention to other objects. For instance, Suna. He could lift her to train his power. Or the dead giant marlin on the ground, which seemed to be of appropriate weight. Or perhaps the male corpse on the floor. After careful consideration, Yang Yi deemed the male corpse the most suitable. Selecting the marlin would provide no good grip points. Choosing Suna would likely provoke resistance, and she might bite him. Hence the male corpse was ideal. It would not resist, nor would it bite. Though its arms were only half remaining, its weight was just right, and its head and neck were still intact, offering an easy grip. Thus Yang Yi clasped the male corpse by the neck with both hands, lifted it, and began performing weightlifting exercises. Have you lost your mind? Are you insane? Suna stared at Yang Yi, profoundly shaken by his bizarre behavior. Tell me, what is your sanity value? Rest assured, my sanity is a high 50. 50. Suna looked at Yang Yi, her eyes filled with incredulity. A decrease in sanity could affect mental state. Even if it remained above 50, some influence was present. But Yang Yi seemed indifferent to his sanity, or perhaps he had been in a subtle state of madness all along. Suna's gaze upon Yang Yi gradually grew heated, as if she were beholding some rare creature. Yang Yi remained utterly oblivious, continuing his lifting repetitions. Unfortunately, after only 9 reps, the sound of some creature slithering came from outside the cave passage. Judging by the noise, it was a single entity. She is back. Quickly stuff these into your ears. Suna handed Yang Yi 2 suitably sized lumps of fish flesh freshly cut from the tuna. But Yang Yi shook his head in refusal. No need, I have my own method. He turned his gaze toward the sea. This was a sea demon about 2 meters in length, dragging most of its fish tail along the ground to support its body. When the sea demon returned and saw the 2 before it froze in shock, especially as Yang Yi's hands were still gripping a corpse by the neck. Yet it reacted swiftly, immediately singing a captivating melody. You hear a beautiful and moving tune, become enchanted, fall into a charmed state, and your rationality decreases by 5. Yang Yi suddenly stopped moving, dropped the corpse, and let his arms hang naturally. It's over, this fool has been charmed again. Suna tightened her grip on her dagger, ready to fight to the death. This time the sea demon probably wouldn't spare her, and might keep her as emergency rations. A cold bead of sweat rolled down Suna's forehead. Meanwhile, Yang Yi, seemingly deeply captivated by the sea demon, walked toward it with unsteady swaying steps. This sea demon was extraordinarily beautiful, a standard beauty with golden wavy hair and delicate striking features. She also possessed a heavenly voice, skin like luminous white porcelain, and a voluptuous, tall, and alluring figure. Yet at the same time, she also had sharp teeth capable of biting through skulls, claws sharp enough to tear open bellies, and a fishtail strong enough to snap human bones. Yang Yi was utterly captivated, nestling into her embrace, as if seeking affection. The latter also seemed to enjoy this prey, momentarily abandoning any attack. Her gaze softened, and she opened her mouth several times, but couldn't bear to bite Yang Yi. Sorry, after all. We're not the same species. Yang Yi whispered softly in the sea demon's arms. When rationality is below 50, you enter a state of frenzy. Strength 2, agility 1, constitution 1 is spirit 2, immune to most abnormal mental states. At some point Yang had already drawn his flintlock pistol, pressed it against the sea demon's body, and aimed at its head. By the time the sea demon sensed the anomaly, it was too late. Boom. The gunshot was deafening, lingering with an unfinished tremor. This time the flintlock pistol lived up to expectations, firing on the first shot, and the sound echoed throughout the cave. The half-section of sharp broken bone tucked into his back waistband appeared to be unnecessary now. You can resist charm? Then what happened earlier? Did you follow me willingly? Suna's crimson eyes were full of bewilderment and confusion. Your gunshot sounds so weird. Why did it deduct 1 point of my rationality? Only 1 point. Yang Yi immediately seized on the key point. This woman was indeed abnormal. Even Yang Yi, with his spirit as high as 8, had lost 3 points of rationality the first time he heard that gunshot. Yang Yi did not intend to explain. He took a step back and watched as the headless corpse of the sea demon slowly collapsed, twitching continuously. Thick, dark red fluid and bits of flesh splattered all over Yang Yi. Suna immediately ran over and looked at the sea demon's corpse with a hint of regret in her eyes. Your gun is too powerful. Could you not shoot the head? Leave a complete sea demon head for me. She pulled out a bottle from somewhere and began collecting the sea demon's blood, brain, tissue, and mucus from its skin. What are you doing? I killed this sea demon. The spoils belong to me. Yang Yi frowned, quickly picked up a piece of flesh, put it in his pocket, and reminded Suna. After all, the capsule machine only needed a small amount of tissue, then the monster's body would be reclaimed by the system, preventing the same corpse from being used for 2 draws. Upon hearing this, Suna paused as well, looked up at Yang Yi, and began to think. How about this? Leave me 1 intact corpse, and he'll give you all the resources on the ship, plus an extra month of sea chart navigation. DLA. Yang Yi thought for only a moment before agreeing. This sea demon's combat ability was inferior to that of the drowned ones. Without its song, most adult males with a spear could kill it on land. So its loot likely wouldn't be very valuable, less useful than the sea charts. You said earlier that the time interval between the 2 groups of sea demons returning to the nest is about 15 minutes, right? Yang Yi asked. That's right. The 3 intervals were 20 minutes, 17 minutes, and 18 minutes respectively, Suna replied, indicating she remembered clearly. Then you'll need to add a new data point, less than 2 minutes. Yang Yi grabbed Suna's arm and pulled her in front of him. The next second, 2 sea demons burst out from the water pool behind Suna and lunged at her original position, but missed. Just moments ago, Yang Yi had noticed ripples on the pool's surface and became alert. When he saw a head emerge from the pool, he immediately pulled Suna, saving her from disaster. 2 much smaller sea demons leaped out of the pool. Upon seeing the corpse of the sea demon on the ground, they flew into a rage, issuing threatening heh sounds. Their fair skin began to flush, and they opened their mouths, revealing rows of sharp teeth. A beautiful melody resounded again, this time a duet, with a somewhat shrill voice echoing through the cave. Even Suna felt dizzy and disoriented from the sound. The song is piercing, yet beautiful. Your rationality decreases by 5. Although Yang Yi was immune to charm, the sound still caused a tightness in his chest, stinging in his eardrums, and even began to drain his health. He immediately raised his gun and aimed. Click. The gun misfired. Let's go. Head outside. The space here is too small, and their songs echo back and forth in the cave, putting us at a disadvantage. Yang Yi declared decisively. Suna was also in bad shape, with blood trickling from one ear and looking dazed. Yang Yi directly pulled her and ran toward the cave entrance. Fortunately, the sea demons were not fast, as they had no legs. Their fishtails were ill-suited for land movement and were relatively slow. The 2 successfully rushed out of the cave, and by then Suna had recovered enough that Yang Yi no longer needed to pull her. Your pistol doesn't need reloading, but it misfires from time to time, right? She asked. Yang Yi frowned, somewhat displeased. This woman liked to pay attention to things she shouldn't, even though it brought her no benefit at all. The 2 continued. Yang Yi wanted to stall until the flintlock pistol's cooldown ended, which would make the fight easier. But they hadn't run far before stopping. Before them lay a murky sea. Most of this island was submerged by the sea. There was no road ahead. Above, there was no sunlight either. The sky was overcast with dark clouds, and a torrential downpour was falling. Only the occasional flashes of lightning illuminated the entire world, followed by deafening thunderclaps. A sea storm. Yang Yi immediately recalled the system announcement that had warned of a great storm approaching. I haven't told you yet. The storm started 2 days ago. Right now all players are desperately trying to flee this sea area, Suna explained. Why didn't you say so earlier? Would it have made a difference? We still had to deal with the sea demon, Suna replied remarkably calm. Her words were correct. If they hadn't dealt with the sea demon, the two would inevitably have been hunted by it in the storm. Not a pleasant prospect. Calculating the time, Yang Yi looked back. The two sea demons were still nearly 20 meters away, or by the time they closed to within 5 meters, the flintlock pistol's cooldown would just about end. And 5 meters was the range Yang Yi was fairly confident in, with a high probability of hitting. He raised his gun and began aiming, holding his breath. When the sea demon entered the 5-meter range, he immediately fired. Bang! The gunshot rang out, and a severed arm flew into the air. But the sea demon's head was still intact. Yang Yi had missed. Your aim is terrible, Suna quipped. As if yours is any better. Yang Yi retorted dismissively. You keep that one-armed sea demon busy, he'll take care of the other, then come back to help you. Fine. The two ran toward their respective targets. Yang Yi dashed toward the siren on the left, whose body remained intact. He had no weapon in hand. The broken bone had long since been lost somewhere. But this was solid ground. Though rocks were abundant, he could always grab one to fight with. Casually picking up a stone, he charged forward. Midway, his power upgraded, boosting his base strength to 4 points, and with the bonus it soared to an impressive 6 points. HRRH. The siren threatened, her scales bristling. She was clever enough to realize that the man before her was immune to seduction, so she wasted no more energy, singing ready instead to tear him apart with her sharp claws and fangs. Yet she was unaware that, setting aside magic, humanity was the undisputed absolute ruler of land. Even without firearms, their dominance remained unshaken, because humans could wield all kinds of weapons in combat, never giving you the chance for hand-to-hand struggle. Yang Yi was no exception. He didn't adhere to any code of honor. Seeing how close they were, he hurled the rock straight at the siren's face. With his strength of 6 points exceeding the average of 5, the blow staggered her, leaving her head bleeding and bruised. Seizing the moment, he mounted her, picked up a larger cobblestone, and pummeled her face relentlessly, showing not a shred of mercy or chivalry. This was a man-eating beast cloaked in a beautiful guise. No sane person would show leniency, let alone Yang Yi in his frenzied state. 1 blow, 2 blows, 3 blows. Until he felt something shatter, and the siren beneath him ceased struggling, did Yang Yi stop. He wasn't unscathed. Dark whip-like bruises from her tail marked his back, and several deep claw wounds tore open his skin. The tail's strength was indeed terrifying, but fortunately, as Suna had said, her upper bonus power matched that of a human. So as long as the battle took place on land, humans held the advantage. It would be the opposite in the sea. After finishing off this siren, Yang Yi casually picked up a piece of tissue and stuffed it into his pocket before charging toward the last one. The fight there was in a deadlock. Suna and the siren were locked together, rolling on the ground like a ball of mud, their faces and bodies covered with filthy mire. The siren was wounded, having lost an arm. Suna was weak from exhaustion. The two wrestled fiercely, neither gaining the upper hand, until Yang Yi intervened, breaking the stalemate. 2 against 1. Yang Yi stomped on the siren, drew his flintlock pistol, and was about to shoot her in the head. Don't shoot. I need her intact, especially the head. Recalling Suna's earlier request, Yang Yi paused and asked, Then what do you want me to do? I've noticed her chest rises and falls as she likely breathes through lungs. Try strangling her. Suna pressed her full weight on the siren, signaling Yang Yi to act. He nodded without hesitation, clasped both hands around the siren's throat, and squeezed. Soon the siren's resistance weakened. After a few minutes, she lay completely still, her eyes rolled back. To prevent a feigned resurrection, Yang Yi maintained the chokehold for 5 more minutes, until Suna patted him, signaling him to let go. With that, all 3 sirens were dead. I never expected sirens to breathe through their mouths too. I thought they had gills. Yang Yi joked, examining the siren. At first glance, it looked like a forced fusion of human and fish. Suna felt behind the siren's ears. She does have gills right behind the ears. To understand how they work together, you'll need to dissect her. Suna's hands roamed over the siren's body like a child who had just gotten a coveted toy, fiddling with it over and over. Yang Yi wasn't very interested. He only needed to know the siren's weaknesses and how to kill them. Understanding the detailed anatomy wasn't necessary. He opened his log to check the siren's information. Name: low-grade siren. Description: sirens are demons that use song and beauty to captivate men at sea, half human, half fish, usually living in groups. They enjoy fully toying with their prey before devouring it bit by bit. This one is a low-grade individual with limited intelligence and weak strength. There are high-grade sirens too. Yang Yi felt a chill of vigilance. If he had encountered a high-grade siren, he might have perished in the embrace of pleasure before triggering his frenzy. Even if the frenzy triggered, he likely couldn't have won. What terrifying creatures! He hoped that the next time he met one, he would have developed resistance to seduction. Meanwhile, Suna began to dismember the siren's corpse. The scene was bloody, so Yang Yi averted his eyes and checked the weather forecast. He had to gather intelligence quickly, find out what had happened in the past 3 days. Today's weather: a storm is coming. Flee the ominous clouds above as soon as possible. Location, origin, sea, storm, waters, sunshine, duration, unknown, temperature, 1220 sea, wind, force level 8. Yang Yi began reviewing the previous day's announcements. An unprecedented massive storm is sweeping across the origin sea. You must hurry to escape this storm zone before it spirals out of control. Friendly reminder: the black fog's speed will increase to 15 knots. Those who run slow may die. After reading, Yang Yi frowned deeply. I've wasted 2 days. I must set off as soon as possible. He began to search for the trail of the nightmare. By now the island was mostly submerged. The land's diameter was less than a kilometer. Only the crowns of some trees still protruded above the sea surface. The water depth was estimated at around. He spotted the nightmare on the left side, thankful it hadn't been blown away, perhaps because its sails were ragged tack. The distance to the nearest piece of land was several hundred meters, likely under a kilometer. At sea, that was a very long distance, especially for a land creature. Yang Yi wasn't a strong swimmer. He had only learned as a child. Swimming a few dozen meters was possible, but hundreds, that was asking too much. Moreover, the sea was turbulent with possible undercurrents. While he was at a loss, he saw Su Na stuffing a piece of siren corpse into her own belly. Yang Yi stared closely. He noticed that under Su Na's clothes attached to her stomach was a black pouch. Is that a space bag? Yang Yi never expected her to possess such a rare artifact. Name: Witch's personal 100 treasure pouch. Type: treasure. Quality: fine. Description: it can be attached anywhere on your body, cannot be stolen, and provides 1 cubic meter of storage space, but cannot hold living things. A qualified witch must first own her own 100 treasure pouch. Yang Yi immediately had an idea and walked towards Su Na. How to fold a low-level sea demon into a 1 cubic space to minimize its footprint. Su Na was too lazy to ponder this question and chose a more convenient method: cut it into more pieces. 1 piece for the tail, 1 for the torso, and the hands and head could also be detached. Stacked neatly, they would take up very little space. Su Na was currently doing just that. Yang Yi walked over and asked, "Do you have any simple rope on you?" 15 units, Su Na replied. 1 unit equals 1 meter. Excellent. Yang Yi rejoiced. Give me all the rope. He'll make a raft so we can cross this sea. Swimming would be too far and too dangerous. Su Na stopped her work and gazed at the sea. Her ship, the Zhanxing, was anchored beside the nightmare, nearly a kilometer from land. Definitely not easy to swim. All right. Su Na thought briefly and agreed to Yang Yi's proposal, handing him all the rope. At this point, cooperation was the best choice. Moreover, the recent battle had established a basic level of trust between them. Yang Yi took the rope and first ran back to the cave. He converted the clothes on the male corpse into fabric and searched through the pile of bones, obtaining a total of 5 fabric units, which he synthesized into 5 units of simple rope. Now he had 20 units of rope. Next came the logs. Yang Yi had a flintlock pistol, powerful enough to blow down a slender tree with a single shot. Spending some time firing a few shots, they obtained enough logs. Then, using the witch's dagger, he refined the logs and bound them tightly with the rope. A 1-meter-wide wooden raft was complete. It consumed 13 units of rope and 8 logs. The remaining rope was tied around the waists of Su Na and Yang Yi. If one of them fell into the water, the other could rescue them promptly. All preparations were done, and now it depended on their... After all, they had only just met, and uncertainties abounded. All right, come aboard. The raft is ready, Yang Yi said to Su Na. He had checked the raft. It had enough buoyancy for 2 people. Su Na had finished dismembering the sea demon and walked over, climbing onto the raft. Each held a simple paddle carved from a dagger and pushed the raft toward the ships. Due to the trees and the island, this stretch of water was much calmer than the open sea. The process went smoothly, and they quickly approached the vessels. Yang Yi even eyed the coconut trees. Though submerged, they still bore coconuts that could be grabbed with a grappling hook. Just as he was thinking this, a tremendous force struck from beneath the raft, nearly toppling them both into the sea. There's something in the water, and it's big. Yang Yi immediately became alert, pointing the flintlock at the water. Su Na, who had almost fallen, lay prone on the raft and caught a glimpse of a dark shadow swimming past. There's a giant sea serpent in the water over here. She pointed in a direction to warn him. Just as Yang Yi was about to look, the raft was lifted again, snapping one rope and loosening the structure. If this happened a few more times, the raft would certainly fall apart. Then both would fall into the water and come under direct attack from the giant sea serpent. The consequences would be disastrous. They were still 200 meters from the ship, and swimming that distance in a short time was impossible. With that thought, a ferocious glint flashed in Yang Yi's eyes. He was in a manic state, fearless and eager to fight. If the sea serpent wanted to devour him, then being devoured would be no complaint. He grinned and tried firing the flintlock while submerged. Bang! Water splashed. As expected, the flintlock was impervious to water. It could even fire after being soaked or submerged. Su Na heard the commotion and turned around, asking, "What are you doing?" "Testing the gun." Su Na frowned, puzzled by his words, and offered her own suggestion. "We could use the sea demon's flesh to lure it away. He'll throw it far." "No need, that's useless." Yang Yi shook his head, staring at the dark shadow in the water. "I can feel it. It's fixated on me, challenging me to a duel below. Feelings. Are you having an episode? How much sanity do you have left? Yang Yi didn't answer, but like a madman he leaped into the water, leaving only these words in the air. When there's a big commotion underwater, pull me up immediately. You plan to fight it underwater. That's suicide. But in truth, Yang Yi had a high chance of winning. He was utterly calm, constantly counting the time. In 15 seconds he could fire again. With the flintlock's power, one hit would kill the serpent, while the serpent would need several minutes to kill him. Serpents lack teeth to tear prey apart. They killed by constriction and suffocation. During that time, Yang Yi could fire 3 or even 4 shots. As long as one shot hit the serpent, would be instantly severed in 2. The great sea serpent welcomed the prey, coming down willingly, and quickly coiled around him. The serpent was as thick as an adult's thigh, as agile as a fish, and an excellent swimmer. On land, Yang Yi might have stood a chance. But in water, without a suitable weapon, his odds were virtually zero. The serpent coiled tightly around him, leaving him only his right hand free to shoot. Why not give it the rest? Soon Yang Yi pulled the trigger for the first time. Click. The gun misfired. No matter, he still had chances. The serpent squeezed tighter, and Yang Yi felt his ribs grinding against each other, unable to resist. He counted the seconds and fired the second shot. Click. Another misfire. The air in his lungs had been squeezed out, his ribs wrist fracture, and his body went numb. Yet he remained calm, waiting for the next opportunity to shoot. The sea serpent sensed something was wrong. Yang Yi was unlike any prey it had ever encountered. It delivered a killing blow, sinking its fangs into Yang Yi's left shoulder. You dare bite me? Then I'll bite you too. Yang Yi bit back into the serpent's body with such force that it pierced the scales. At the same time, his third shot came, aimed at the serpent's head on his left shoulder. Bang! A thunderclap erupted underwater. The shot blew off half the sea serpent's head. But it didn't die instantly. It let out a piercing shriek and immediately released the troublesome prey. Yet its death was certain. It couldn't survive. I won. Yang Yi achieved final victory, feeling relief and relaxation. Despite the arduous struggle, he had triumphed. His body slowly sank. Damn, I need to swim up. Yang Yi tried to control his body, but found it on the surface. A loud explosion sent water spouting into the air. Then a large amount of dark blood rose. Suna, who had been watching the underwater commotion, pulled the rope tied to her waist as soon as she heard the gunshot. But the other end of the rope was broken. At some point during the struggle between Yang Yi and the sea serpent, the rope had snapped. Suna stared at the water, hesitated for a few seconds, and finally jumped in. A few minutes later, Yang Yi coughed up a mouthful of water, including a piece of snake skin he had bitten off. After resuming breathing, his chi and blood recovered quickly, and his consciousness cleared. It was Suna who had saved him and performed CPR. Thank you. I owe you my life, Yang Yi expressed. Before passing out, he had noticed the broken rope and thought he was doomed, but he never expected the woman to jump in. At the same time, he noticed that the unlock condition for his question mark skill had changed to 23. By then, Yang Yi had roughly guessed the condition. It likely required near-death experiences 3 times. On the other side, Suna's heart was filled with mixed emotions. The way she looked at Yang Yi was strange, as if she were observing a rare species, betting his life on a fight without hesitation. This defies biological instinct. How peculiar. He'll make a note in my observation diary. After contemplating, she noticed the wound on Yang Yi's shoulder. You've been bitten. This snake might be venomous. Suna leaned in and tried to suck out the venomous blood with her mouth, stopping only when the blood she spat turned bright red. Yang Yi looked at her, feeling moved. After all, this act carried risks. Snake venom is mostly protein and can be digested by stomach acid. But if there were any mucosal tears in the mouth or digestive tract, it could be very dangerous and lead to poisoning. After the treatment, Yang Yi had recuperated. The two approached the ships smoothly and boarded their respective vessels. Yang Yi's observation diary, his manic state, is so fascinating. He never retreats, has clear perceptions, and makes battle plans. But he might not even notice how strong his fighting desire is, how much he craves to kill the opponent. Even if it means his own death, he won't hesitate. Yet if the opponent is overwhelmingly powerful, what choice would he make? This warrants further observation. Returning to the ship, the fish and shellfish he had caught earlier had already rotted and become inedible. Yang Yi kept only 1 cyst-laden pufferfish and returned the rest to the sea. His food supplies consisted of just 1 piece of dark bread, 3 eyeball fruits, and 38 vitality coconuts. As for freshwater, he had only 1 liter left. Yang Yi devoured 3 eyeball fruits, picked up a vitality coconut, and prepared to mix a glass of vitality coconut bliss to restore his energy. Player Suna requests to board the ship. Yang Yi promptly agreed. She boarded from the stern and quickly entered the cabin of the Nightmare. At that moment, Yang Yi was concocting vitality coconut bliss. You can make potions? Suna exclaimed in surprise. Yeah, I found a recipe on the island. I can mix salt and vitality coconuts to make vitality coconut bliss. Want to try some? Yang Yi handed her the prepared coconut bliss. Since she had saved his life, giving away something like this was no big deal. Suna took it, examined it curiously for a moment, but instead of drinking it, she stashed it into her treasure pouch. I won't take any supplies from your ship, Yang Yi proposed as he drank the freshly mixed vitality coconut bliss. Suna didn't care, for the astrologer had barely any supplies to speak of. She was dirt poor. Should we team up again? Yang Yi suggested. The storm at sea was fierce and cooperation would greatly increase their chances of survival. Moreover, the astrologer had navigational charts which would prevent them from losing their way in the storm. Fine. Suna agreed, for that was exactly why she had come. Yang Yi stepped out of the cabin. Outside, the world was dim, the sky shrouded in dark clouds. The howling wind mixed with seawater shook the hull violently. He had no intention of leaving immediately, for there was an urgent matter to deal with. He had been poisoned by a sea snake and needed antidotes. In the log's attribute panel, a poison status had already appeared. Furthermore, the sea serpent's information indicated it was venomous. Yang Yi walked over to the monster gacha machine and tossed in the flesh and skin of the two sea serpents. Name: giant sea serpent. Description: a cunning giant serpent of the deep, larger than an ordinary python that delights in torturing its prey. Can be fed into the monster gacha machine. Slightly venomous. Are you sure you don't want to trade that sea monster corpse for a gacha? Yang Yi suddenly turned around and asked. For in Suna's treasure pouch lay another sea demon's corpse. No. Suna shook her head like a rattledrum. In her eyes, the corpse held far greater value than any gacha. By studying the sea demon's physiology, she could gain the knowledge she sought. And knowledge was far more precious. Yang Yi shrugged, not pressing further. He turned and spun the wheel on the octopus-headed gacha machine's chest, producing the clattering sound of gacha balls colliding. Soon 3 gacha balls were ejected. Suna stood behind Yang Yi, observing his every move and jotting down notes in a small notebook. Yang Yi lives on a ghost ship. His mental state is worrisome. His gacha machine is a terrifying octopus head, yet Yang Yi seems quite fond of it. Unaware, Yang Yi picked up the glowing orbs on the ground. First came a can with a mermaid pattern on it. Name: Siren's voice type, consumable quality, fine description, contains a special gas. Upon inhalation, one emits a piercing shriek that briefly paralyzes nearby creatures and reduces their sanity. Inhaling it causes a loss of 20 sanity. You have acquired the voice of a siren, but obviously you still can't. The second item was a blue crystal pendant. Name: Siren's tier type, relic quality, fine description, when worn reduces spirit by 2 and grants immunity to charm effects. If you hear a siren's song, it will transform into a piercing wail. Occasionally, it causes auditory hallucinations, as if a siren is whispering in your ear, reducing sanity. You can only listen to my singing. You belong to me. The third item was a short sword. Name: Sea Serpent's Fang type, treasure quality, fine description, a short sword crafted from the fangs of a giant sea serpent. It has a slight paralytic effect and deals minor damage to aberrant demons. Yang Yi was quite lucky. 3 gacha rolls yielded 2 pieces of equipment, including a weapon that could compensate for the lack of firepower when the flintlock was on cooldown. As for the other 2 items, Yang Yi pondered for a moment and decided to sell or trade them. Siren's Tear was a formidable tool against sea demons, but Yang Yi's frenzied state provided innate immunity, making it somewhat useless to him. As for charms, such mental attacks could be quickly adapted to by players with high spirit. The first time he was charmed, Yang Yi lost 10 sanity, but later it only cost him 5. Next time he encountered it, it probably wouldn't even deduct 5, or rendering it ineffective. The siren's voice, however, was a useful item. But Yang Yi urgently needed to recover from his injuries, so he had to reluctantly part with it. He immediately sent a private message to Zhou Dai, captain of the Radiant Goddess. Yang Yi, I need 2 bottles of holy water. Do you have any in stock? The other side seemed busy. A reply came only minutes later. Zhou Dai, long story short, I'm busy sailing right now and don't have time to produce holy water. I only have a limited supply on hand. Yang Yi understood her implication, meaning she had some, but at a high price. However, Yang Yi had enough bargaining chips. He replied, 1 bottle of Vitality Coconut Bliss plus Siren's Tear and Siren's Voice. Trade me 2 bottles of holy water. This time Zhou Dai's reply was much faster. You're a male player? You actually killed a siren. She found it hard to believe. After all, many male players in the chat channel had fallen victim to sirens. At that price, I can give you 3 bottles of holy water. Let's cooperate again in the future. The trade was quickly concluded. Yang Yi tossed the trade items into the monster gacha machine, and shortly after 3 bottles of holy water appeared in his hands. He immediately drank one, then handed one to Suna. You were right. That sea serpent was venomous. Just in case, you should drink one too. It can detoxify and heal injuries. Suna took the holy water but didn't drink it immediately. Instead, she studied it curiously and then reached for her treasure pouch. I told you to drink it, not stash it away. Yang Yi interrupted her movement. If you're not going to drink it, then give it back. At the same time, he found Suna. Whether it was Vitality Coconut Bliss holy water or the sea demon's corpse, she seemed to want to stuff everything into her treasure pouch. Suna was momentarily stunned, showing no reaction. But she could tell Yang Yi was serious. She relented, opened the bottle cap, and drank the holy water. Holding it in your mouth doesn't count either. Yang Yi's sharp eyes caught that the woman hadn't swallowed at all. She was puffing her cheeks, holding the liquid in her mouth. Suna frowned, seeming displeased, but under Yang Yi's insistence, she reluctantly swallowed. Open your mouth and let me see. Oh. Suna obediently opened her mouth, showing that she had indeed drunk it. Yang Yi nodded. In truth, Suna was also injured, and this would help her recover faster. But secretly, Suna took out a small booklet and wrote, Yang Yi is very aggressive and likes to coerce others. What are you writing? Yang Yi approached and asked. Nothing. Suna concealed the booklet without changing her expression. Seeing this, Yang Yi didn't press further, respecting her privacy. You've seen the chat channel and the announcements, right? Everyone is now desperately trying to escape the sea region. We need to flee too. Yang Yi analyzed the situation and asked about the astrologer's details. Her ship was only level 1, 10 knots slower than the level 2 Nightmare. They decided to use grappling hooks to bind the two ships together so neither would lag behind and get separated. Before we leave, help me with one more thing. Yang Yi pointed at the coconut palms whose crowns were barely visible and whose coconuts were nearly floating on the water. Circle the island with me and gather as many coconuts as we can. Grab what we can in one round. No lingering. Suna nodded in agreement. Yang Yi had originally wanted to take them all, but that would take too much time. The two ships circled the small island once, harvesting a total of 92 vitality coconuts. Satisfied with the haul, Yang Yi generously split them evenly with Suna, 46 each. Adding the 34 already on his ship, they now had a combined total of 126 vitality coconuts, 80 for Yang Yi and 46 for Suna. For a long time to come, Yang Yi wouldn't have to worry about restoring his energy. Today's weather: the storm has intensified. Beware of floating debris at sea. Location: origin, sea storm sea. Daylight duration, unknown. Temperature 13-18 C. Wind force level 9. Yang Yi and Suna had formed a fleet and were sailing for 2 days. During these 2 days they had never seen the sun. The sea was pitch black with limited visibility. The wind had also increased by 1 level, and the sea was tumultuous. A ship speed of dozens of knots was lucky to maintain half. At the beginning of the storm the wind was only level 4, a golden period for travel. During this time Yang Yi was seduced by a sea demon, missing the golden period for travel. His progress fell far behind, placing him at the tail of the main fleet. From the chat channel, he learned that his friend Captain Suda of the Jifeng had broken out of this storm sea. His ship had a speed of 70 knots, the fastest in the game. If it had already reached level 2, it would likely be even faster. He released intelligence outside the storm sea. The wind was calm, and the sun was shining brightly. It was expected that in the next 2 days many fast ships would break out of the storm sea. Except for the 2 unlucky ones who set off halfway, Yang Yi and Suna. Damn it. Yang Yi hadn't slept for days. His eyes were bloodshot, and his temper was irritable. He drank a bottle of coconut delight to replenish his energy, and privately messaged Suna on the log. Suna, are there any islands or reefs ahead? He didn't want to recklessly run aground on an island or hit a reef. No, don't disturb me. It's a critical moment. Since returning to the Zhanxing 2 days ago, she hadn't shown her. What exactly are you doing? Yang Yi asked. But Suna did not reply. She was in the cabin of the Zhanxing, where a long wooden table was set up. Not far from her, there was also a basketball-sized crystal ball, displaying a nautical chart within 100 nautical miles. But her attention was not on the chart, it was on the sea demon's corpse on the table. Suna used the witch dagger as a scalpel, cut open the sea demon's skin, observed the complex neural and vascular structures inside, deduced the composition of its organs, and recorded in detail. Some organs had already been removed intact, including the brain and eyeballs soaked in glass jars. She had spent considerable resources to exchange for several glass jars, all for this moment. This sea demon. Its body structure has many defects. It would be more appropriate to call it a half-mermaid. There is also an immune rejection reaction inside, as if forcibly piecing together human and fish organs, with the two rejecting each other. It needs to eat humans to alleviate this rejection. She muttered her findings while recording. But this rejection reaction seems to be weakening. If it disappears completely, the sea demon's body may undergo new changes. On the other side, Yang Yi was still at the helm, avoiding floating debris from the currents. If not for the storm, many might have been willing to use grappling hooks to catch these floaters. But now everyone avoided them like the plague. These floaters were large, fast, and some were just ship fragments, likely from some unfortunate player. So Yang Yi never relaxed, staying tense, dodging these floaters. His minion was very shabby, with weak durability of only 600, its hull made of rotten wood, far from sturdy. After just 3 collisions, durability dropped by over 100. A few more hits and his ship would fall apart. The situation was urgent. Yang Yi thought about using the hideout blueprint. But the system indicated that his current environment was unsafe and did not allow using the blueprint for modification. Helpless, he had to grit his teeth and continue sailing. Meanwhile, Yang Yi also kept an eye on the world channel to understand changes and movements in the sea. Most were bad news and complaints from players. It's over. The wind was too strong. I think I sailed in the wrong direction. Can anyone tell me the way? How much further? Urgent. Buying timber at a high price. I have millions in my bank account. You just give me 10 timber, and he'll give you all of it. Idiot. Damn, my ship is taking on water. Who's selling timber? 30 conch coins per unit, unlimited purchase. Timber could repair ships. Its value skyrocketed and was hard to buy. Sometimes one unit of timber could fetch an exorbitant price of 50 conch coins. Something underwater is attacking my ship. Suddenly a message caught Yang Yi's attention. This might be a new change in the sea, monster attack. His experience attracted many players' attention, who eagerly asked, "Bro, are you sure? Could it be that you hit an obstacle?" "No, I'm in the cabin, and the hull keeps making noise. Something must be ramming my ship." "My God. Haha, the spawns have started. Take your time, I can already see the border. Farewell. Save me, it's a fishman." The message was cut off. The player was probably dead. The system sent his final unfinished last words. Yang Yi also grew tense. A spray of waves hit Yang Yi's face, a bone-chilling cold. He immediately contacted Suna. "Suna, there might be monsters in the sea. We need to prepare. What's going on over there?" Yang Yi asked. Suna had finished the dissection, her face, flushed with excitement, a rosy red. Her eyes were bloodshot, her breath fragrant, as Orchid looking at the message on the log. Condition met dissected and studied aberrant entities, 22. Your talent is unlocked, Forbidden Scholar. Forbidden Scholar permanently reduces sanity cap by 20. Mysticism system unlocked. You can now build special structures, research your own unique recipes, and create unique items. You couldn't resist your curiosity after all. Little do you know. This may be a path of no return. Suna, I'm asking you, what are you doing? Answer me. Yang Yi was getting angry. At this moment, Suna took a deep breath. Calm down. What's up? How's your ship's durability? Yang Yi asked. Almost no damage. Good, then come to the main. They'll give you permissions, help me repair the ship, and fill the durability. Okay. Suna agreed. She packed her precious organ pieces into the treasure pouch, grabbed the crystal ball, and walked towards the main. The two ships were connected by ropes and grappling hooks very close. Normally placing a plank would let one walk, but now both ships were somewhat bumpy. It was better to crawl instead of walk for stability. Suna crawled across the plank and upon boarding the Mingyan, was called into the cabin by Yang Yi. I've given you permissions. Use stone to make a stone hammer, then replenish the Mingyan's durability. Stay on the Mingyan from now on. We might encounter monsters soon. It's dangerous to be separated. World Chat channel continuously displayed messages of players under attack. The monsters they encountered were different. There are many red lanterns in the water, and they are gathering towards me. Has anyone encountered them? What the heck are those? Just fireflies, no need to be afraid. Damn. Over a dozen little fishmen have trapped me in the captain's cabin. Unknown, if you dare. How is someone standing on the sea, blocking my course? A demon fell into my trap, it seems, called the drowned, already stabbed into a sieve. Etc. Yang Yi silently mourned for a second. 8 times out of 10, he had been blown up by the drowned. Almost every minute someone was attacked and killed. At the same time, many others managed to escape this stormy sea unscathed. As for Yang Yi, perhaps because the Nightmare Star had set sail late and was somewhat far from the main fleet, he encountered no monsters. Instead, another matter troubled Yang Yi. He had run out of food. Water was not a worry thanks to the vitality coconuts, but protein and energy must be replenished. Suna, do you have any food on your ship? Yang Yi sent a private message. Only 1 liter of water. Suna's voice sounded from beside his ear. She had just finished repairing the ship and came to the bow deck holding a crystal ball. This crystal ball was a dynamic nautical chart that could synchronize the sea conditions within 100 nautical miles. Now the chart showed only 2 ships, the Astrolabe and the Nightmare, their small markers very close. The map on your ship, can it be dismantled? Yang Yi exclaimed in surprise. This crystal ball is a receiver, as long as it's not too far it works fine. Suna explained. This nautical chart was actually quite crude. Besides ships, it only displayed large obstacles on the sea, such as giant floating objects showing as a small black, while islands appeared as large patches of shadow. By avoiding these black dots, they could effectively prevent their ship from being caught in the turbulence of giant floating objects. At the same time, the existence of the chart prevented them from losing their direction. Another day passed. Even Yang Yi, no matter how iron-willed, had to sleep and rest. Sailing turned into 2-person shifts. When tired, they went to the captain's cabin to sleep. The nightmare on the Nightmare seemed to only haunt the captain. At least Suna never said she had nightmares. During this time, Yang Yi kept an eye on the chat channel, hoping to buy food. But he was doomed to disappointment. Due to the storm, most players' food supplies had run dry, so they simply wouldn't sell. Those who did sell were the few lucky ones who had escaped the stormy sea, and not only were the prices high, but damn it, you couldn't even get them. Yang Yi sent a private message, and the other party replied only after more than 10 minutes with just 3 words, sold out. Some didn't even reply. This was true hunger marketing. Those who couldn't buy would simply starve. Can't go on like this. Yang Yi sat up from the captain's cabin, his stomach growling incessantly. Now Suna was at the helm, and the wind had increased to level 11. Standing on the deck, one had to slightly crouch to avoid losing balance. Their clothes had never dried, always wet with a salty, fishy smell. Must get some food, or once we lose our strength it's all over. Yang Yi muttered to himself, eating a vitality coconut, drinking all the coconut water, and even eating the coconut meat clean. Without food they could only eat coconuts. But this stuff wasn't filling, they still needed high-energy food as a base. After thinking it over, the only way Yang Yi could think of to obtain food was fishing. And he happened to have a fishing rod. Suna at this rate well starved to death. They'll try fishing, you keep sailing for a while. Yang Yi sent a private message. Okay. Suna replied promptly. Yang Yi carried the fishing rod to the ship's central courtyard, chose a suitable spot, and prepared to cast. As the saying goes, the rougher the waves, the more expensive the fish. Applied here, it probably meant the rougher the waves, the stranger the fish. Or perhaps the larger. But he underestimated the difficulty of fishing in a storm. The ship pitched and rolled, the waves were turbulent, the float was barely visible, and there was no sign of a bite. An hour passed, and Yang Yi caught nothing except nearly unlocking the achievement of human bait. 2 hours passed, still no gain, and he was getting a bit irritable. He opened the world chat channel and sent a message, has anyone tried fishing? He also attached a photo of fishing your ass? You have leisure to fish instead of dodging floating objects. Indeed, only Yang Yi had time to fish, everyone else had to be careful to avoid floating objects. Wait till you catch a mermaid, and she'll eat you. In reality, if he actually caught a sea monster, it was uncertain who would eat whom. After a bunch of joking replies, finally came a reliable piece of information, presumably from an experienced angler. With the big waves, the fish are deep, your float is useless. If you insist on fishing, remove the float, lengthen the line, and attach a weight to sink it deep. Yang Yi suddenly understood and immediately adjusted the line length, removed the float, and hung a small stone on the hook. After all, in this world, fishing might not require bait. Half an hour later, there was finally a reaction. The fishing reel rolled wildly. Yang Yi gave a tug, and a tremendous force nearly pulled him into the sea. Oh, luckily, he braced his foot against the ship's edge and didn't fall in. He kept pulling, but the other end stopped struggling. What's going on? Did the line break? Yang Yi leaned over to look. A trace of red light appeared from the seabed, coming closer like a red lantern as big as a fist. What's this? He immediately became alert and drew his flintlock pistol. The next second, a shark burst out of the sea, charging straight at Yang Yi. It was a hammerhead shark, over 1 meter long, entirely red, with a smooth, streamlined body. Its head was peculiar flat, like a shovel, with 2 eyeballs hanging on either side, emitting a dim scarlet glow in the darkness. But even stranger, it had 2 strong hind legs, bumpy and warty like a toad's hind legs. This fish is abnormal. Your sanity decreases by 5. The shark burst out of the water, opening its huge mouth to bite Yang Yi. Fortunately, Yang Yi was prepared. He immediately lay down to dodge, and at the same time pulled the trigger of his flintlock. Bang! A flash of fire erupted. The shot was extremely powerful, blasting the shark as thick as an adult's waist into 2 pieces. But it was not dead yet. The upper half kept jumping, lunging to bite Yang Yi. Yang Yi grabbed the sea serpent's fang, seized the moment, and directly mounted it. Plop! After 2 fierce stabs, the shark finally stopped moving. Name: hammerhead demon shark. Type: food. Description: a hammerhead shark contaminated by the abyss, cruel and bloodthirsty. Its meat is edible and can also be used for gacha. If consumed, it cannot be used for gacha. Choose one of the 2. Please note, this is a social creature when you find one. It means a group is following. After reading the description, Yang Yi's pupils contracted, and he immediately looked at the sea. Red lanterns lit up one after another, increasing in number, gathering towards the nightmare. They did not mourn their dead comrade for a moment. They surfaced one after another, showing their fins as if trying to jump onto the nightmare. Their number was probably close to 100. Suna, something's wrong. Yang Yi immediately ran to the bow deck. She also sensed something amiss and abandoned the helm to join Yang Yi. Another hammerhead demon shark jumped onto the deck. This kind of shark had some mobility on land, using its 2 hind legs to hop, like a toad, though rather clumsily, only able to jump 1 or 2 meters at a time. But they were so numerous that direct combat was impossible. Yang Yi observed the sharks and suddenly had an idea. So now we have to climb the mast to have a chance to survive. Yang Yi concluded. He had observed the demon sharks' movements and noticed that they could only leap on the deck and had only hind limbs. This meant the demon sharks lacked climbing ability. As long as they hit on the mast, they would be invincible. Without further ado, they acted. Yang Yi held a flintlock pistol in his left hand and the fang of sea serpent in his right, prepared for both ranged and melee combat. But Suna had no suitable weapon. Using that small dagger against the sharks was too dangerous. There's a bow in my room. Well, grab it while we run. It'll come in handy for you. Suna nodded, her hair whipping wildly in the gale. There was no fear on her face. Instead, she seemed somewhat excited, occasionally glancing at the demon sharks. I want a relatively intact shark, especially the eyeballs must be intact. Suna suddenly spoke. Let's survive first. The two immediately moved, sprinting toward the starboard side. The sharks were all gathered on the port side, so the starboard side was relatively safer. They crouched low, advancing quickly against the strong wind. The captain's cabin on the starboard side had no door, but Yang Yi could temporarily create one using his flintlock pistol. The cooldown should be just right by now. Yang Yi fired a shot, blasting a large hole just big enough to reach in and grab something. He felt around and found the pirate longbow placed in the corner along with over 20 simple wooden arrows, all coated with poison. He handed the bow and arrows to Suna, and then the two rushed toward the central courtyard. The wind was much weaker in the central courtyard located between the captain's cabin and the hold, blocked mostly by the structures, which was beneficial for archery. As soon as they stepped into the central courtyard, a demon shark pounced from the shadows on the side. Had Yang Yi not noticed in time, he would have been knocked to the ground. He drew the fang of sea serpent ready to strike, but an arrow shot from behind him struck the demon shark's eyeball. The eyeball seemed to be the hammerhead demon shark's weak point. After being pierced, it fell into complete chaos, rolling on the ground and losing combat capability. Yang Yi glanced back at Suna. Such good archery. The two continued running toward the mast. By then there were already 7 or 8 demon sharks in the central courtyard. They were all on the left side of the deck. Upon seeing the pair, they leaped like toads. Suna displayed her prowess, continuously drawing and shooting arrows, accurately hitting each shark's eyeball. Although the shark's eyeballs were large, glowing, and conspicuous, hitting every single arrow was incredibly impressive. What did you do before? Yang Yi swallowed and asked. I studied medicine. But in middle school, I was the provincial archery champion, good enough for the national team. Why didn't you say so earlier? Yang Yi said in exasperation. Why didn't you use the bow when we fought the sea monsters before? I was ambushed and dropped my bow into the sea. If only he had known Suna was this skilled, he would have prepared enough arrows. There would be no fear of these jumping sharks. But now they had limited arrows and couldn't afford a prolonged fight. Some demon sharks had even swum to the right side, preparing to attack from both sides. New sharks kept jumping onto the deck. Fortunately, they both reached the base of the mast. With the new sharks still far away, they had to hurry and climb them. You go first. Cover me with arrows after you're up. Yang Yi leaned against the mast, watching the sharks closing in from both sides. This was the plan he had deemed most reasonable. If Yang Yi climbed first, his only usable weapon would be the flintlock pistol. Although powerful, it was far less useful than the bow, which could shoot multiple times in this situation. Suna understood Yang Yi's intention and wasted no time. She shoved the bow into her treasure pouch and began climbing. Yang Yi held the fang of sea serpent horizontally and the pistol in his left hand, assuming a combat stance. The shark from the left arrived first, leaping toward Yang Yi. He had observed them for a long time and noticed a trait: they could only jump forward. Before jumping, they selected a direction and aimed their heads that way, then leaped. Using this trait, Yang Yi sidestepped to dodge the shark's pounce. As the shark passed by, he thrust his sword directly into its gill slit. The momentum carried the shark forward, its body torn open by a huge wound. After landing, a pile of entrails spilled out. It was clearly not long for this world. It works. Yang Yi kept his eyes peeled and dodged another shark's attack. He repeated the tactic, thrusting the fang of sea serpent into the next shark's gill slit. In this way, he killed 3 sharks that had surrounded him. But Yang Yi was no battle-hardened warrior. Not long ago, he had been a battered and patient, unable even to... This clumsy swordsmanship was only possible because he was observant and calm enough. And it didn't succeed. On the 4th attempt, he made a mistake, dodged too slowly, and was bitten on the right shoulder by a shark. The excruciating pain nearly made him faint. However, Yang Yi's will was as tough as steel. He immediately pressed the flintlock pistol against the flat head of the hammerhead shark. This shot had to fire. Yang Yi pulled the trigger. Click. The wretched gun misfired again at the critical moment. Damn it. He didn't give up and quickly changed tack. He released the fang of sea serpent with his right hand, switched it to his left, and stabbed at the shark. At that moment, an arrow grazed Yang Yi's scalp and hit the shark's eyeball. The shark released its bite in pain, allowing Yang Yi to break free, though his right arm was a bloody mess. Hurry up, Suna urged. She sat on a crossbeam about 5 meters above the ground, completely safe. Now she drew her bow and provided powerful cover for Yang Yi's climb. I don't have many arrows left. You'd better be quick. Yang Yi tucked the flintlock pistol into his belt and, enduring the intense pain, began to climb. The sharks that caught up were all shot by Suna, so Yang Yi was temporarily safe, but his climbing was slow. He exerted force through his legs, pressing his left arm and cheek against the mast, striving to climb higher. Hurry up. I only have 3 arrows left. Yang Yi had only climbed 2 meters when he received the bad news. Soon the last 3 arrows were spent. Suna could only cling to the mast with one hand, leaning as low as possible, trying to pull Yang Yi up. But she couldn't reach him. At that moment, a shark lunged, leaping toward Yang Yi and biting his calf. Teeth clashed against bone, producing a chilling sound. Yang Yi, Suna cried out. Yang Yi's body shuddered, racked by excruciating pain that made him feel nauseous. But he dared not let go, gritting his teeth and holding on. Because he knew that if he let go and fell, he would surely die. The shark stayed lashed onto his leg, its teeth tearing. Yang Yi felt dizzy and tight-chested, his vision blurry from tears. He looked down at the shark and saw two huge blood-red eyeballs. It seemed to be smiling, laughing at Yang Yi's desperate struggle, knowing he could not escape death. "Don't you dare!" Out of nowhere, a blaze of fury exploded in his chest, scorching hot. At the same time, a log message appeared. Condition met. Face death 33. You have unlocked the talent. Refuse death. Refuse death triggers when HP is below 10 or upon receiving a fatal wound. HP will not drop below 1. I refuse death for 5 minutes. Simultaneously, all attributes except Spirit 2, Sanity 50. Afterward, enter a 24-hour weakened state with all attributes except Spirit 2. During weakness, refuse death will not take effect. PS refuse death can break the attribute limit. Your sanity is below 50. You have entered a state of frenzy, immune to most negative mental effects. Strength 2, Agility 1, Constitution 1, Spirit 2. Ignore pain, tireless, fearless until sanity recovers. Under the double buff, Yang Yi's strength reached a staggering 8 points, while spirit became 4. His eyes turned bloodshot, filled with red veins. His previously limp right arm inexplicably regained strength, gripping the mast tightly. At the same time, he reached out his left hand, grabbing the eyeball of the demon shark below. With a casual squeeze, he burst the eyeball, sending fluid splattering everywhere. Yang Yi used brute force to crush the eyeball of the shark beneath him. The latter released its bite due to the excruciating pain, but Yang Yi did not let it go. He lifted it by the ruptured eye and slammed it into another shark. Yang Yi's strength now stood at 8. He could easily smash the shark's skull with even his fists. Yet Yang Yi was no reckless brute. If he could overpower them from a distance, he would not resort to hand-to-hand combat, at least not now. Applying force with his right arm, Yang Yi leaped up more agile than a monkey and landed directly on the crossbeam. From now on, it's my turn. Yang Yi's expression was cold and fierce as he aimed the dark muzzle at the demon shark below. Bang! A demon shark was split into 2. What just happened? Suna looked at Yang Yi in disbelief. A moment ago, he was on the verge of death. The next, he had turned the tables in an instant. So extraordinary. Suna's gaze toward Yang Yi grew fervent and insatiable, as if she wanted to devour him whole, to see through his depths. The look was too blatant, making Yang Yi somewhat uneasy. He merely brushed it off. Nothing special, I just unlocked a new talent. I see. Suna did not press further. Even if she had, Yang Yi would not have revealed the truth. This was his trump card, immensely powerful, capable of turning the tables at critical moments. Moreover, the side effect of this talent was also lethal, a weakness period lasting 24 hours. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. On the other side, Suna felt a lingering fear. Her rationality had plummeted by over 20 points, and she had barely resisted the urge to dissect Yang Yi with her dagger. In the end, Suna held back her rationality, stabilizing just above 50. Suna, don't rush. Stay patient. Yang Yi is special, observe him slowly. She silently admonished herself. Yang Yi had no idea what that insane woman was thinking. He took out holy water, drank 2/3, and poured the remaining third over his wounds. The effect was good. The wound soon stopped bleeding. He continued to aim and fire the flintlock. One misfire, one shot that killed a shark. The sharks, unable to bite, the 2 of them grew frenzied, with some turning to gnaw on the mast. Others began devouring their dead kin. But the mast was the sturdiest timber on this ghost ship, thick enough that the sharks' jaws couldn't get a proper grip, and they couldn't breach it anytime soon. Yet the risk remained. It was a race between the mast breaking first and the sharks dying first. There were only a little over 30 uninjured sharks. Yang Yi felt confident of victory. Wait, no need to shoot anymore. Suna suddenly called out to Yang Yi. Why, oi? Yang Yi turned his head to look. Look, the poison of the cystic pufferfish is starting to take effect. She pointed to a shark with an arrow through its eye. It was likely the first to be hit. Its body lay tilted on the deck, no longer moving. Soon its carcass was consumed by its brethren. Yang Yi immediately understood. Cannibalism among the same species is common in insects. Therefore, some pesticides are specifically designed to delay death, allowing the insect to return to its nest before dying, achieving the effect of wiping out an entire nest in one go. Suna explained. I see. Yang Yi nodded and pulled the trigger, killing a shark. But doesn't shooting accelerate their death anyway? Bullets don't cost me anything. Up to you, oh, just leave one intact for me, Suna replied. After a dozen minutes, all the sharks were dead, not a single. The deck was littered with shark carcasses, thick with the smell of blood. Yang Yi, in a weakened state, took ages just to climb the mast. His current vitality was only 15, he had to be careful. Otherwise, a fall could send him into a dying state, and then finish him off. Suna had already come down. She selected the largest and most intact shark corpse, and promptly began dissecting it on the spot, preparing to store it in her 100 treasures bag. This is a jackpot. Enough for about 70 gacha pulls. Yang Yi's eyes sparkled. In his past life, his favorite part of playing mobile games was the card pulling. In many games, he would delete them right after pulling. Shall we split them half and half? Yang Yi looked at Suna. You do the pulls. I only need one. Suna replied indifferently, seemingly uninterested in the gacha. That's a pity. Then reluctantly do the pulls on your behalf. Yang Yi couldn't wait and began cutting up the devil hammerhead shark corpses on the deck. He cut a batch, pulled a batch. The corpses gradually vanished. In total, he performed 72 gacha pulls. There were 74 devil hammerhead sharks. One was dismantled by Suna, and one was set aside as emergency rations. To avoid accidental poisoning Yang, he specifically chose the first one that had been split in two. Fortunately, it hadn't been eaten by its kin, so it served as food. After finishing Yang, he checked the course and map again. Confirming no major issues, he looked at the 72 glowing orbs placed beneath the gacha machine. He hadn't opened any, planning to open them all at once. What would be inside? Yang Yi was full of anticipation and began opening. You obtained 1 unit of steel. What? You obtained 200 shell coins. You obtained 5 units of lumber. You obtained 5 units of stone. This is infuriating. Yang Yi slammed that piece of lumber onto the deck. It slowly vanished, transferred to the warehouse. Did Yang Yi lack these basic resources? Relics, treasures, at the very least some accessories. By the end, Yang Yi grew numb and stopped. Mostly the contents were basic resources: fresh water, steel, lumber, cloth, and even crystals. There were also 12 loaves of dark bread, 5 sausages, and 3 watermelons. Maybe the devil sharks were too weak compared to sea monsters and the drown. Or perhaps it was simply bad luck. After opening everything, Yang Yi only got 3 decent items. 1 exquisite, 1 good, and 1 common. Name: low-tier fire element type, consumable material quality, exquisite description, can be used to enchant equipment attributes, imbuing it with the power of fire. P.S. Equipment can be re-enchanted with the last enchantment taking effect. Name: red glowing fishing net type tool, quality good, description, can be installed on the ship's side to capture unlucky fish that pass by. However, this net emits an unsettling red glow that drives normal fish away. You have probably seen this red glow somewhere before. Name: sharkskin swimsuit type, treasure, quality, common, description, when swimming in water increases swimming speed by 25 and reduces stamina consumption. It can easily help you in a swimming competition. Yang Yi stored the 3 items properly. The abysmal drop rate brought back some unpleasant memories, but soon a thought struck him. Could it be that submitting too many corpses of the same monster drastically reduces the drop rate? The more he thought, the more plausible it seemed. Maybe the system wanted to encourage players to kill different kinds of monsters. The way to verify this theory was simple: let someone else do a gacha pull. No sooner said than done. Yang Yi pulled Suna, who was still in the courtyard, over and handed her a fin to try. That devil shark had been intended as food, but with plenty of dark bread now, there was no need to risk eating raw meat. Give it a try, Yang Yi urged. If Suna got good loot, it would confirm his theory. Repeatedly submitting the same monster's corpse leads to plummeting drop rates. If Suna also got nothing, then it was purely luck-based, and he had just been overly lucky before. Suna tossed the fin in and turned the crank. The octopus had suddenly emitted golden light, and even its tentacles turned gold. Wow, golden legendary. Yang Yi thought he heard a phantom sound. A golden orb emerged from the octopus mouth, picked up by Suna. Could this be the difference between a whale lord and a non-whale? Yang Yi blushed, feeling for the first time that this game was unfair and full of malice. Suna picked up the glowing orb, her eyes brightening, before stowing it away in her treasure bag. What came out? Yang Yi leaned over, asking curiously. Want to know? Beg me, and I might tell you. Suna replied with a teasing smile, her eyes narrowing like 2 crescent moons. If you won't say, then forget it. Yang Yi wasn't one to indulge her, nor was he envious. He had 3 treasures. Although they weren't golden in terms of quantity, he had the upper hand. At the same time, numerous mystical conjectures floated in his mind. Could it be that this shark died the earliest, hence had the best yield? This possibility cannot be dismissed. However, the specific situation would have to be tested further to confirm. One thing is certain, though repeatedly submitting the same type of monster's corpse would significantly lower the yield. Yang Yi allowed Suna to continue steering while he cleaned up the battlefield. He had to admit the monster gacha machine was quite convenient, as the shark's corpse and blood were all collected. However, the damaged deck and mast along with the large hole in the captain's cabin would require materials for repairs. Plus, during the battle, they had collided with several floating objects, causing damage to the ship. Just for repairs, it cost 40 units of wood. Fortunately, the gacha machine also produced resources. The current food and resources are as follows: food, black bread 12, sausages 5, freshwater 8L, vitality coconuts 67, watermelons 3. Suna's cabin still has over 40 vitality coconuts. Resources: wood 55, fabric 45, stone 32, steel 10, crystal 8, sulfur 6. Sea conch coins 2050. Steel, crystal, and sulfur should be advanced resources with a conversion rate of 5:1 in the gacha. For now, there was no shortage of food. Unless they reached a dead end Yang, he would not fish in the stormy sea again. He opened the world channel to start leaving a message. You'd better not fish in the stormy sea, or you'll catch monsters. You're quite brave, not dead yet. Impressive, still able to speak. Do you have a picture? Why should I believe you? Yang Yi had no intention of arguing. The reason for not posting a picture was to protect their sanity. A day quickly passed. It was the 6th day since the storm had arrived. Today the chat channel was lively with players constantly leaving messages stating they had broken through the stormy sea. It seemed that most players were not far from the exit and would soon leave the sea area. Only Yang Yi and Su Na were still quite far behind. They were 2 days behind schedule. At the time the storm had just begun and the wind wasn't strong, allowing everyone to sail quickly. It wasn't until the storm intensified along with the appearance of floating objects and monsters that their speed slowed. Yang Yi opened the weather forecast to check. Today's weather location: Sea of Origin, stormy sea, duration of sunlight unknown, temperature 8-12 C. Wind force level 10. The wind had increased again, and the drop in temperature made Yang Yi feel a bit cold, yet still bearable. In contrast, Su Na had been wearing her initial outfit and seemed completely unfazed by the cold. Yang Yi stepped out of the captain's cabin and onto the bow deck. Su Na, it's your turn to take over. Yang Yi called out. She nodded, handed over the crystal ball, and after the exchange walked towards the captain's cabin of the Nightmare. By the way, don't you feel cold in that light outfit? Yang Yi asked curiously. Not cold, this outfit keeps me warm. Su Na sent a private message. Name: which is casual wear, type treasure, quality fine, description keeps warm and waterproof, can enhance the recovery speed of sanity. As a witch, one must prepare a set of casual clothes to prevent others from knowing you are a witch. This is a fine piece of equipment that can enhance the recovery speed of sanity. Starting with a witch set. Yang Yi questioned the fairness of the game again, but there was nothing he could do. Fortunately, he had a powerful flintlock. Not long ago he used a low-grade fire essence, giving the sea serpent's fang a mutated attribute. Initially he wanted to mutate the flintlock, but it was unreliable as it occasionally misfired. The mutation was merely an added attribute to enhance power, providing no substantial help to the weapon's inherent. Moreover, the flintlock was of high quality and the fine-grade low-grade fire essence probably wouldn't bring about any significant changes. It would be better to mutate the sea serpent's fang. The effect was quite good. The sea serpent's fang had evolved into a fine piece of equipment. Name: sea serpent's fang, mutated, type treasure, quality fine, description a short sword made from the teeth of a large sea serpent, now possessing the power of fire after mutation, capable of causing burn wounds and containing fire poison. The blade of the sea serpent's fang had turned red, becoming hot to the touch after a while, and was significantly sharper than before. Yang Yi continued to steer alternating shifts with Su Na. After another day passed, Yang Yi woke up from the captain's cabin and glanced at the log. He realized he had slept for less than 3 hours. He had nightmares again, and they were a series of them. In the first dream, he saw Su Na pointing a gun at his head with a cold glare. But how could that be? If she wanted to kill him, she could have done it when he fell into the water during the battle with the sea serpent. Oh, why wait until now? Yang Yi didn't take it to heart, refusing to let his mind wander. He shook his head, feeling a bit of a headache from lack of sleep. In the second dream, he found himself swallowed by an enormous centipede-like creature. But where would a giant centipede come from at sea? This so-called prophetic effect, could it merely be coincidence? After all, the system didn't mention it. Yang Yi fell into self-doubt, but quickly dismissed the thought. Regardless, he had no intention of letting nightmares lead him by the nose. Even if this dream had prophetic qualities, the one making decisions could only be himself, not the nightmare. Otherwise, would he not become a disciple of the nightmare? After consuming a vitality coconut, Yang Yi felt much better. His wounds had mostly healed, the holy water had a good effect. After resting for at most 2 days, he would be fully recovered. Why is it so dark? Yang Yi opened the door and was startled by the scene before him. Outside, he could not see his hand in front of his face. It hadn't been this dark a few days ago. Yang Yi immediately checked the weather forecast. Location: Sea of Origins, duration of sunlight, none, temperature 12-18 C. Wind force level 10. Compared to yesterday, the temperature had risen, but the duration of sunlight had changed from unknown to none. Suddenly, he felt a wave of unease, steadying himself against the ship's edge as he walked towards the bow. Su Na, are you there? Yang Yi shouted loudly, but there was no response. He took out the navigation log, which glowed, allowing him to see in front of him. At that moment, he realized that the nightmare had stopped sailing and was not moving. It was due to the raging waves that he hadn't noticed. Yang Yi's heart tightened, and he immediately ran to the bow deck, discovering that no one was at the helm. Where's Su Na? His pupils constricted sharply, his heart racing as he quickly scanned his surroundings for Su Na's figure. A faint light appeared to the left front, seemingly blocked by a shadow. Yang Yi quickly rushed over to find Su Na standing there holding the crystal ball, motionless, her expression blank, as she gazed at the surging sea in front of her, as if mesmerized by something. Yang Yi saw this and said irritably, I'm calling you, why aren't you responding? The latter didn't react much, only extending a finger to point ahead, saying in a soft voice, "It seems we are surrounded." Yang Yi immediately looked in the direction Su Na was pointing. It was dark there as it should be, but he couldn't tell if it was due to Su Na's words. Yang Yi began to feel that something was writhing on the surface of the sea ahead. "What is that?" Yang Yi squinted, trying to see clearly. Suddenly a flash of lightning illuminated the scene, and Yang Yi finally saw the true form of the creature. They were giant long worms resembling centipedes, their bodies segmented with four blade-like mandibles on their heads, opening sideways, capable of slicing through their prey like a guillotine. These creatures were very similar to the bobbit worm in the sea, but their size was much larger and the diameter was difficult to judge from a distance. Their length was also hard to determine, as most of their bodies were hidden beneath the water. There were many of them even visible at the farthest point of view, with the closest being about a kilometer from the nightmare. These giant worms swayed in the storm, moving their heads, as if performing some kind of ritual, or perhaps celebrating. Unknown giant creature observed sanity decreases by 20. Yang Yi's mind jolted, and he immediately looked at the crystal ball. The sea chart indicated that they were surrounded by these giant long worms, numbering no less than 100. On the sea chart, these monsters appeared as tiny black dots the size of sesame seeds scattered around the nightmare. They were surrounded by these giant worms. Yang Yi pulled Su Na into the captain's cabin of the nightmare. "What exactly happened?" he asked gravely. "Where did those insects come from?" "About a quarter of an hour ago, the sky suddenly turned dark. I was still steering the ship when I noticed many black spots appearing in the crystal ball's image. So I stopped the vessel and walked to the very front of the bow to get a clearer look. As for what happened afterward, you know it too," Su Na recalled. After hearing this, Yang Yi immediately took the crystal ball and examined it carefully. Meanwhile, Su Na began to share her speculation about these giant insects. These creatures should have no eyes, no visual organs. Otherwise, they would have already noticed the nightmare. They are likely beings that have long lived in darkness, relying on hearing, smell, or other senses to hunt prey. Because of the storm's interference, their perceptive range has drastically shrunk, so they cannot see the nightmare right before them. Su Na stated her judgment. Yang Yi, meanwhile, was studying the sea chart with a furrowed brow. At the same time, he opened the world channel to see what other players were experiencing. As soon as he entered, he found it in a heated uproar. "How can it be so dark? I'm completely lost. Who can tell me where the exit is? There are so many giant insects appearing in the sea. The closest one is less than 200 meters away from me. My God. God, have you abandoned me?" New dangers emerged in the stormy waters. Those players who had escaped gloated and taunted those still trapped. More monsters spawning. "Awesome. Serves you right for being so slow. Ever played a battle royale? You're slow, so the shrinking poison zone catches up. Who can you blame? Baga. Just die in there then." "You absolutely cannot die. If you do, who will I sell this freshly caught fish to? Ha. High price buyback of second-hand equipment and items. Damn. I'd rather feed the insects than leave a single coin for you. 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river. Don't be too pleased too early." Yang Yi closed the chat channel, his expression grim. By now most people had already escaped the stormy waters. Perhaps because so many had fled, the stormy region began to drive out and eliminate the players still inside. Since Yang Yi and Su Na had set off 2 days late, they too were trapped. He paced back and forth, then suddenly recalled a crucial piece of information. 200 meters. Yang Yi reopened the chat channel, scrolled to that player's message, and sent a private message. "Still alive. Are you sure the giant insect is 200 meters from you?" The other person, highly tense, replied quickly. "Yes. It scared me to death. This worm must be dozens of meters long and about 3 meters thick." "Calm down. Look again carefully. Are you sure it's 200 meters? "No need to check. I'm a surveyor. I can tell that distance at a glance." Yang Yi's eyebrows relaxed, and an idea struck him immediately. He studied the sea chart using its zoom function to set the scale to 1 centimeter per 200 m, so that every centimeter on the map represented 200 meters. Then he made a couple of gestures on the chart. "Got it." Yang Yi's fighting spirit revived, his spirits lifted, and he said to Su Na, "You're right. These insects have no eyesight and their senses are severely limited by the storm. We can try to slip through the gaps between them. The route might be winding, but these giant creatures have considerable spacing among themselves. It can be done." Su Na's eyes also lit up at his words. She was deeply fascinated by these bizarre creatures and hadn't even thought about fleeing. But Yang Yi was different. He wanted to survive no matter the cost. "But do you know the safe distance? And there may be individual differences among them." "A certain friend gave me a hint," Yang Yi replied. He set the lower limit at 200 meters with no upper limit, the farther the better, and prepared to continue toward the exit using this standard. "Now let me take the wheel. Just in case, don't stay in the cabin. It's best if you stand on the deck. That way if an insect attacks, you'll notice it immediately. If you have to jump into the sea, there might still be a chance to survive." Yang Yi was highly decisive. Once he figured things out, he acted. Holding the crystal ball map in one hand and steering with the other, he adjusted the ship's speed as needed. When passing between two relatively close giant insects, he slowed down appropriately. As he drew near with the occasional lightning bolt illuminating the sky, he truly realized how enormous these creatures were. Their diameters ranged from 2 to 5 meters, and the parts above the water were dozens or even hundreds of meters long. If one of them bit the ship, the nightmare would likely shatter on the spot. Yang Yi navigated carefully and changed into a sharkskin wetsuit. If the ship were unfortunately destroyed and he fell into the water, this wetsuit would prove immensely useful. After slowly sailing for 2 hours, Yang Yi felt a bit relieved. At last he had found a way out. Though steering with a pounding heart, it was still better than a dead end. Yang Yi shared his discovery on the World Channel. Doing so cost him nothing substantial. Instead, he would gain goodwill and perhaps some unexpected rewards. So he posted this message. I found that these insects have a very limited perception range. As long as you stay more than 200 meters away, they won't detect or attack you. We can slip through the gaps between them. Really? Bro, you're brave. How did you figure that out? But how do we gauge the distance? It's too dark. Wait for thunder. When lightning strikes, you can see briefly. Indeed, without sea charts, they faced greater difficulty. But staying put was certain death. In the face of hope for survival, humans never lack courage. Thanks, bro. I made it through smoothly. This method works. You're my second parent. Yang Yi instantly received many friend requests, and some even sent him items directly. Not much, mainly supplies they couldn't use at the moment. He selectively accepted some requests. The harvested materials included wood X3, cloth X2, 27, stone X12, steel X7, crystal X13, sulfur X4. Someone even sent a rare item from the captain of the fisherman Hichi. Yang Yi accepted his friend request. His ship was slow, blocked by these giant insects, hesitating to move forward, though actually not far from the exit. Thank you. Without you, I probably wouldn't have dared to sail through. This item is my gift in return. Treasures can be fished again, but life is only one. Good luck. When this item was spat out from the octopus head's mouth, Yang Yi's eyes nearly popped out. Truly, the fisherman, an experienced angler, always catches something extraordinary. Name: low-grade abyssal stone. Type: consumable. Quality: exquisite. Description: a stone that can enhance the quality of relics. It can raise the grade of a relic that is fine or below by 1 level. Place this stone to your ear, and you will hear the sound of the deep sea. It was a magical stone with a semi-transparent black crystal shell and phosphorescent liquid flowing inside. I never expected my first exquisite item to be a gift. Yang Yi laughed. He immediately used the soul stone to upgrade his rusted flintlock. The soul stone shattered, and the phosphorescent liquid surged into the flintlock, altering its properties. Name: slightly glowing rusted flintlock. Type: relic. Quality: exquisite. Description: this was once a masterwork, gradually regaining its edge. Unlocks dual mode. Cannon mode: fires a single devastating shot, dealing massive damage with tremendous recoil. Aim carefully. Then enters a 12-hour cooldown, during which firing will 100 misfire. Standard mode: no reload required. Rate of fire increased to 1 shot every 10 seconds, dealing minor damage. But beware. Due to seawater corrosion, there is a 50% chance it will fail to fire. Yang Yi gazed at the reborn flintlock, his heart surging with excitement. 1 shot every 10 seconds, though weaker, was a definite improvement. And there was also cannon mode. His eyes burned with fervor as he looked at the swaying insects. Perhaps. Yang Yi stared at these giant insects. His sanity had dropped to 48. Teetering on the edge of madness, his heart itching to try. But he still kept his wits and resisted the urge to test the gun. No. Unless absolutely necessary, I must not do this. Navigating through the gaps between two colossal worms was no easy feat, especially when the distance between them was merely 500 to 600 meters. It was like dancing on the edge of a blade where even the slightest misstep could lead to utter destruction. He had to constantly monitor his position and the storm's impact on the vessel. Yang Yi, his nerves taut, weaved and zigzagged for a full 8 hours, leaving a pile of vitality coconuts scattered at his feet. The coconut juice's refreshing effect activated once every 24 hours, but vitality coconuts had no such restriction. However, repeated consumption led to diminishing returns and a rather bloated stomach. Thanks to this, Yang Yi felt like an iron man with his energy still above 70%. Yet only he knew how much he was suffering. How much farther to the exit? Doubt began to creep into Yang Yi's mind. But his will was as tough as steel. He quickly shook his head, pushed the thought aside, and stubbornly continued forward. His private message channel kept buzzing with notifications, mostly thank you notes from other players. During this time, a large number of players had managed to escape the stormy sea. Their ships were generally slower, and they had been blocked by the giant worms near the exit. Only after Yang Yi's warning did they muster the courage, gauge the distance, and dash through. Thus many players felt grateful to Yang Yi and sent him private messages. Of course, there were bound to be those who failed and were devoured by the worms. But the dead couldn't send messages, so Yang Yi had no way of knowing. At the same time, he gleaned some information from the private messages. The sea near the exit was a buffer zone about 50 nautical miles long, free of giant worms, and with much milder waves. So as soon as he spotted a vast expanse of empty sea without worms, the exit was close. Yang Yi stared intently at the crystal ball. Within 100 nautical miles, there was no such sea area. Everywhere had some giant worms. The nightmare was relatively fast, and with the sea chart's assistance, it should have been about to escape by now. Another 3 hours passed. Finally, on the crystal ball, he saw a patch of sea with no black dots. It stood out as if erased by a rubber about 80 nautical miles from the nightmare. "Suna, we're almost out," Yang Yi exclaimed excitedly. But she didn't show a relieved or joyful expression. Instead, she reached out her hand feeling something and suddenly replied, "Don't you feel like the storm is weakening?" Yang Yi instantly became alert. By now the storm had become a protective umbrella for the stranded ships. If the storm weakened, it meant the giant worm's perception range would expand gradually until fully restored. Yang Yi immediately checked the weather forecast. Today's weather. The storm is calming down. Surprise, surprise. Location, origin, sea storm area. Daylight, duration, unknown. Temperature, 1218. Wind force level 9. Indeed, the storm had weakened. Yang Yi remembered it was level 10 when he woke up. Moreover, the sky was no longer as dark as before. A faint light gradually emerged. Having been focused on steering Yang, he had ignored these subtle changes, and now, as if awakening from a dream, he broke out in a cold sweat. If this continued, the wind force would soon drop to level 8, or even level 4, level 1. By then, these giant worms would bare their sharp fangs and tear apart every ship in their path. Full speed ahead. Yang Yi almost shouted, immediately altering his originally cautious course. He was now only about 80 nautical miles from the buffer zone. Rather than carefully detour, it was better to choose the shortest possible route, even if it meant taking risks, because no one knew when the storm would stop. But Yang Yi felt the speed at which it was dying down was bound to be fast, exceeding expectations, and then they would inevitably be attacked by the giant worms. So he had to move as fast as possible. After another hour of sailing, the nightmare finally reached the edge of the buffer zone with less than 40 nautical miles to go. Here the density of giant worms was much lower, but the wind force had already dropped to level 4, barely hindering the worm's perception. The world channel was filled with curses. Though only a handful of players each had a mouth like honey-coated venom, furiously cursing the system. "Damn system. FCK. The worm found me, Yang Yi was in the same boat. 2 giant worms were following him, gradually closing the distance. He really had no idea how these giant worms managed it. Their long, slender bodies could swim so fast in the sea. Suna also noticed the danger behind and immediately ran to the stern. "What are you doing?" Yang Yi shouted. "I'm going to release the grappling hook from the astrolabe. That should buy us some time." This? Yang Yi was a bit surprised, but he didn't stop her. It was indeed a good idea. The giant worms had no visual organs. They would most likely attack the unmanned astrolabe, buying them some time. But doing so meant Suna would be without a ship. No time to worry about that. Survival came first. Suna was decisive and immediately released the astrolabe's grappling hook. The astrolabe was slower than the nightmare to begin with, and without the hook's pull, it fell behind. As expected, it became the prey of the 2 giant worms. The 2 giant worms weren't allies. They even fought over the prey. Taking advantage of this, the nightmare swiftly slipped away, opening up a considerable distance. But Yang Yi didn't relax. With the astrolabe gone, the crystal ball would no longer display the sea chart. Yang Yi had to rely on memory to steer ahead. He remembered another giant worm ahead that they had to face head-on. This route was the best Yang Yi could choose. If he took another route instead of 2 worms behind him, there would be over a dozen. Rather than being hunted to death by over a dozen giant worms, it was better to brace himself and fight one. "So now you take the helm from now on. Just keep the course," Yang Yi commanded sternly. "When I tell you to jump into the sea, don't hesitate. Jump immediately. Don't stand foolishly still on the bow." Suna nodded and took the wheel. Yang Yi stepped forward, standing at the very front of the ship. The nightmare had no weapons and was utterly helpless against a giant worm, like fish on a chopping board. And Yang Yi didn't delude himself into thinking he could narrowly dodge the worm's attack. So he would take a gamble. Let's see if the worm's head was tougher or his precious flintlock's caliber was bigger. He changed into a sharkskin wetsuit, stood on the bow, and waited grimly. Soon a dark shadow appeared ahead. Once past this shadow, the relatively safe buffer zone lay beyond. Yang Yi switched the flintlock to cannon mode and sneered, "Come on, let's make a bet." Without the storm's interference, the worm's perception range was surprisingly large. It soon locked onto the nightmare and swam over. Yang Yi's nerves were stretched to the limit, and the fingers gripping the gun turned white from excessive force. He was far from being a sharpshooter, so he had to wait until the distance was close enough for a sure hit. Only one chance. Failure meant death. When the distance closed to 300 meters, Yang Yi could judge the size of the worm before him. It was about 3 meters in diameter, not large among giant worms, and its length above the surface was about 40 meters. It lowered its body, charged straight ahead, and opened for blade-like jaws gleaming coldly, like an open guillotine attempting to snap the nightmare in one strike. "Suna, jump into the sea now," Yang Yi commanded in a commanding tone while aiming the gun at the worm's head. He could clearly see the worm's mouth parts, 2 rows of bristle-covered appendages resembling arthropod limbs arranged in a circular shape like a curled-up spider. These appendages could deliver prey into the mouth where dense rows of sharp teeth would crush it. And its prey now was the nightmare. Facing a life-or-death crisis, Yang Yi instead calmed down, took deep breaths, and looked at the worm. He saw it so clearly that he could almost smell the salty, fishy odor emanating from its body. At the same time, it meant Yang Yi and the worm were close enough. Less than 10 meters. Now. Yang Yi pulled the trigger. Boom. The powerful recoil sent Yang Yi flying backward, his right arm numb from the strain, and he crashed into the captain's cabin behind him. The gunshot was deafening, like the roar of civilization challenging nature. Its power was naturally terrifying, no less than a cannon's. This shot directly hit the worm's head, causing it to explode. The mouth parts and jaw bones flew off, scattered. But the worm's momentum didn't stop. It still crashed into the nightmare. Nightmare suffered a direct hit, durability 600, hull broken. The fragile nightmare was snapped in two by the worm. The wind force in the stormy sea had dropped to level 1. The number of survivors had plummeted like the shrinking safe zone in a battle royale. Once the time was up, any player caught outside would be killed. But the buffer zone was different. No giant insects, calm waters, and a deserted island hundreds of meters in diameter. A man in a sharkskin wetsuit struggled ashore. It was Yang Yi. Clinging to a shattered piece of driftwood, he had swum nearly 2 nautical miles to reach this place. A woman was still lying on the wood. "Suna, you're heavier than I thought." Yang Yi gasped in complaint. There was another reason he had chosen. Along this route lay a small island at the edge of the buffer zone not far away. If the ship sank, they could try to swim to it and take temporary shelter. But Yang Yi had underestimated the distance of 2 nautical miles. Halfway through, his energy hit zero. If not for his frenzied state allowing him to substitute blood essence for energy, he would have joined the drowned. Once ashore, he wanted nothing more than to lie spread-eagled on the sand like a dead fish. Beside him lay another dead fish, Suna, unconscious from exhaustion. She was actually a decent swimmer, but her energy was limited, so he had dragged her the rest of the way. Consequently, his blood essence was nearly depleted, leaving only 17. He checked his stats: sanity 42100, a energy 0, 100 blood essence 17100. Truly hanging by a thread. Though the nightmare had sunk Yang Yi was not desperate. When the astrologer sank, Suna had already shared with him the information about shipwrecks. Ships could be rebuilt. Yang Yi opened the ship interface. At the top it read, materials required for ship reconstruction: wood 500, cloth 250. Materials stored in the cabin can be used. Each reconstruction requires an interval of at least 1 month. Items on board will be frozen. He checked his resources. Cloth was nearly sufficient as others had given him plenty. Wood, however, was in great shortage, but he could chop trees. As he pondered, he drifted into sleep. This time there were no nightmares. He slept more soundly than ever before. After what felt like an eternity, Yang Yi was roused by a system announcement. Remaining players in the stormy sea 3. Evacuate the area immediately or be swallowed by the black fog. Yang Yi opened his eyes and found himself lying deeper inside the island. Beside him, Suna stared at him with eyes as red as blood. The scene felt strangely familiar, but Yang Yi, still groggy, didn't react in time. "Do you know how long you've slept?" Suna asked. "No idea. Over 12 hours. I woke up, dragged you here. It's already been 12 hours. Well, that explains why I'm a bit hungry." Yang Yi shrugged, patting his empty stomach. The long-awaited sleep had refreshed his body and mind, restoring him to about 70, except for the gnawing hunger. "When you were asleep, you were as heavy as a dead pig. I could barely drag you." Suna complained. "Right back at you. You were just as heavy when you passed out." Yang Yi shot back. "Is that so?" Suna didn't seem angry. Instead, a faint, unreadable smile crossed her face. "But since you're awake, you can answer me now." Her gaze suddenly turned cold. She raised her hand, aiming a flintlock pistol straight at Yang Yi's forehead. The gun was all too familiar. It was his prized possession, the Glimmer flintlock. But how had it ended up in Suna's hands? Before Yang Yi could ponder further, she began interrogating him in a tone that felt eerily familiar. "Man, 3 sentences. Give me one reason not to kill you." Her crimson eyes looked dangerous, and with that half-smile, every hair on his body stood on end. At that moment, he recalled the nightmare from before. In that dream, he had been held at gunpoint by a reedied woman. Wasn't this exactly the same? He immediately tensed, taking it seriously. "Suna, this joke has gone too far." "Do I look like I'm joking?" she retorted, the muzzle unwavering, fixed right on it. "By the way, that was your first sentence. You have 2 left. Make them count." Yang Yi fell silent. The dark muzzle pressed down on him like a heavy weight. He glanced around. The tide had risen, shrinking the island to only about 50 meters in diameter. All the nearby trees had been chopped down, apparently blasted apart by the flintlock reduced to a pile of timber. Counting the pieces, there were fewer than 300, far from enough to build 2 ships. So Su-na intended to claim all the wood and only build the astrologer. Yang Yi pieced together the situation and narrowed his eyes. Self-preservation in the face of disaster was only human. His voice grew cold as he replied, "I'll give you all my equipment and all the wood on the island. Just let me go." No, not enough. Su-na shook her head firmly. "Have you considered that if I shoot you, everything you own becomes mine?" You? Yang Yi stopped himself before that became his third sentence. He never imagined Su-na would be so ruthless, after all the trust he had placed in her. Frustrated, he racked his brain for any remaining leverage, but found none. Finally, he spat out in anger, "Then just shoot." Yang Yi stood up ready to counterattack. The talent denied death would keep him from dying for a short time, his final trump card. Ha ha ha. Just as I thought. You get flustered when a gun is pointed at you. Su-na burst out laughing, her body shaking, tears streaming down her face. You? Yang Yi's expression hardened with displeasure. Then Su-na added, "How about this'll take half of everything you have, and I'll let you live." What? Yang Yi frowned. "Still don't get it. I mean, I want to merge with you." "Merge?" he exclaimed. "Yes, exactly, merge." Su-na affirmed. Yang Yi was utterly speechless. But he also breathed a sigh of relief. Su-na didn't really want to kill him, she was just getting back at him for what he had done. He sat back down, half amused and half exasperated. "And if I refuse?" "I hold the gun. You have no choice," she replied. Su-na twirled the pistol, striking a victorious pose, then began rummaging through her treasure pouch. Yang Yi finally relaxed, thinking this woman has definitely gone mad. In the middle of nowhere, she suddenly wanted to merge with him. He wasn't a transforming mecha that could become a head. What kind of merge could they do? But her determined rummaging made him wonder. Could she be pulling out a balloon? His mind wandered as he looked at Su-na. When he saw the pile of things she took out, all anticipation evaporated. The items included a sea monster's tongue, eyeballs, brain, glands, trachea, heart, all stored in jars. A bunch of bizarre organs and entrails. Your sanity decreases by 5. Sorry, so much stuff. Hard to find. Finally, Su-na found what she was looking for. It was not a balloon but a golden card. Yang Yi took it and felt his vision darken. Name, ship, merge, card type, consumable, quality, special description. With mutual consent, 2 ships can be merged. The merged ship will be larger, have more rooms, and inherit the skills of both vessels. A ship can only inherit skills from 2 ships at most. Afterward, the materials needed for upgrades will increase or change accordingly. So this is the merge you meant. Yang Yi turned with an awkward look. What else did you think I meant? Su-na Yang Yi was at a loss for words. This girl had definitely said it on purpose. And this item was probably the golden legendary she had drawn earlier. Captain Su-na of the astrolabe has used a rare item, a ship merge card, to apply for merging with your vessel. The supplies in both cabins will be combined. Agree, disagree? Agree. Please vote for a new captain. If there is a tie, the merge will fail, and the merge card will be refunded. Note the captain has absolute authority. Only after the captain's death will a new election be held. Yang Yi directly voted for himself, and of course Su-na would also vote for him. This was agreed upon before the merge. The captain must be Yang. Having Su-na as captain made Yang Yi feel insecure. Given her nature, she would likely steer the ship into a trench and feed it to the sea monster there just to see if the monster had a big enough appetite. After the merge, the ship interface in both logs became identical, but the primary authority was in Yang Yi's hands. He could allocate some permissions to Su-na, including material distribution, hull expansion, steering, restricting access to certain rooms, etc. The ship also had a chance to be renamed. The default name was the combination of the 2 special ships' names called the Nightmare Astrolabe. That name was too long, so Yang Yi deleted 2 characters and changed it to Nightmare Star. Barring any accidents, the Nightmare Star should be the first merged ship among players. Normally, a merge would require paying certain materials to modify the hull, but now those materials were included in the reconstruction. To reconstruct the Nightmare Star, a total of 700 lumber, 300 cloth, 100 stone, 20 crystal, and 10 steel were needed to rebuild the ship. Seeing steel and stone, Yang Yi was very satisfied. This ship should be sturdier. The material shortage was still in lumber, and stone and cloth were also lacking. Yang Yi had originally hoped that after the merge Su-na could provide some material assistance, but who would have known? Her cabin was almost empty. Would one cloth too? She was poorer than a beggar. Had she even tried to survive seriously? Now the cabin had 59 lumber, with a shortage of up to 641. Stone count was 44, a short by 56. Cloth count was 274, a short by 26. On the island, stone was easy to obtain. On sea islands and near shores, one could always find plenty of rocks. Cloth could only be obtained by fishing, taking a chance. Fortunately, the shortage was small. But lumber? I don't know if the trees on the island were enough to chop. Su-na, how much lumber have you collected over there? Yang Yi asked. Before he woke up, Su Na had used a flintlock gun to blast down a large number of trees. The commotion must have been huge, but he was completely unaware. No wonder Su Na said he slept like a log. I've collected a total of 292 lumber here. If we dig up the roots of these trees, it might be a bit more. Including the stock in the cabin, we have a total of 351 lumber. The shortage is quite a lot. Yang Yi frowned. Now trading wasn't possible, only gathering. He looked around. Even the trees submerged in the sea near the shore had been chopped down by Su Na. Only in the distance there were still tree crowns exposed on the sea surface, trees that hadn't been cut in time before being submerged hundreds of meters away. To get the lumber, he could only try swimming over, blasting them down with the gun, and then carrying them back. Fortunately, the storm had stopped. Now the sea was calm, and the sea level should not rise any further. Give me back the gun. Yang Yi demanded his precious flintlock. You collect some stones on the island, and near shore, we need 56 units. Don't dig up tree roots. It's better to craft a fishing rod and go fishing. As for me, I'll swim farther and bring back some lumber, Yang Yi arranged. All right. Su Na agreed readily. Yang Yi had a sharkskin swimsuit that reduced stamina consumption while swimming, so he was the most suitable for this task. But before taking action, the two still needed to fill their stomachs. Catching fish underwater was the most convenient and quick option. Yang Yi also had a gun that could fire underwater, making it effortless to catch fish. In just 15 minutes, he caught 2 plump grouper fish. However, since they were shot with a gun, the fish were broken, so the two made do with eating them. Then Yang Yi swam toward the distance. Su Na started picking up stones and fishing. Presumably because of the buffer zone, there were no monsters in the sea. The whole process went smoothly. After swimming over 100 meters, trees began to appear. Boom. Sparks and gunfire erupted underwater, scaring away the nearby fish. After another shot, a log with a diameter of over 30 centimeters floated up. This was the thickest tree nearby. Yang Yi could bring back at most 2 logs at a time, so he tried to pick thicker ones to get more lumber. Half an hour later, Yang Yi brought back 2 relatively thick logs, which the system recognized as 18 lumber. However, swimming, diving, pushing floating logs ashore was comparable to a triathlon in a sports meet. One trip consumed over 30 stamina for Yang Yi. At most, he could make 2 round trips each time before he had to lie on the island to recover stamina. Without vitality coconut juice, his stamina recovery was very slow. In one day, he only completed 5 trips, harvesting a total of 93 lumber. Su Na had enough stone, even extra. She collected 74 stone. Collecting stone on the island was probably the simplest and easiest task, as long as you found the island. As for fishing, Su Na was particularly lucky. Perhaps she was in a novice protection period. Today, she caught 2 bottles of Nongfu 3 punches, and even in 2-liter bottles. As for the fish she caught, they all went into their stomachs. In addition, she harvested 5 lumber and 8 cloth. At this rate, they could rebuild the ship in 4 or 5 days at most. At night, for safety, neither of them took risks by fishing or logging. Instead, they hid in the center of the island. They also arranged for night watches. Su Na took the first half, and Yang Yi the second half. Without a bed, Yang Yi still slept soundly. It was much more comfortable than sleeping on the nightmare. He didn't have nightmares. In the chat channel, everyone was guessing who the remaining 3 players in the Storm Sea were, and why they hadn't come out yet. I think those 3 are all in the belly of the giant worm, not fully digested. It's not bad that they haven't come out. This way the game won't enter the next phase, giving us a chance to upgrade ships and gather resources. Could it be that they discovered a hidden instance on the sea and are carrying out a secret mission? In short, there were all kinds of guesses. But they could never guess that Yang Yi and Su Na's ship had sunk, and they were gathering materials to build a new one. As for the other person, Yang Yi didn't know their situation either. Maybe they were also repairing their ship. Some people who had added Yang Yi as a friend were asking him if he was safe, and if he had come out. Those who had sent gifts in the Storm Sea, Yang Yi had added as friends. In response, Yang Yi gave a unified reply. Before sleeping, only 7 words. The ship blew up and building a new one. While a big shot is a big shot, the ship exploded, but the person is fine. Awesome. Do you need a sidekick? On a deserted island, a lone man and woman. The man was responsible for swimming and collecting timber. The woman was tasked with fishing, gathering cloth, fresh water, and food. Though a bit tiring compared to the nerve-wracking sea voyage earlier, it was utterly blissful. If possible, settling down on an island to farm would not be a bad choice. But Yang Yi knew it was impossible. He looked back in the direction from which his boat had come. On the sea surface at the edge of his sight, there was a thick black, the black mist. Today that patch of black had turned even darker. This signified that the black mist was drawing nearer. It would be best to flee this sea area as soon as possible. 3 days had passed since Yang Yi regained consciousness. In total, Yang Yi and Su Na had spent about 4 days on this island. Today would be the 5th day. Timber was still short by 72 units, while cloth and stone were sufficient. Yang Yi had also asked Su Na to gather extra stone to bring aboard just in case. Though stone was easy to collect here, it was hard to come by at sea, only obtainable through fishing with extremely low efficiency. After all, stone like steel does not float on the sea unless one happens upon a resource chest. Barring any mishaps, by the end of today, the two would have enough materials to rebuild the Yinching. After breakfast, He set out early to begin the day's logging. Through these days of training, he wouldn't dare call himself a champion swimmer, but he could certainly claim the title of a skilled swimmer. With the aid of the sharkskin swimsuit, even against a champion swimmer, He would dare to compete. The first 3 trips went smoothly, yielding 57 units of timber. 1 or 2 more trips would suffice. But on the 4th trip, a sudden anomaly occurred. The sea surged with turbulent waves. Just as he was about to blast down the second tree with his gun, a massive school of fish rushed past him from the side. These fish, large and small, many of which he had never seen nor knew the names of. Yet they all shared one trait: they swam desperately forward, as if being chased by a demon, as if fleeing. Even the ferocious predatory sharks had no thought of hunting. They swept past like a gust of wind. The water current they stirred hit him like a shockwave, tumbling him disoriented underwater. With great difficulty, he finally surfaced. He was unharmed, though he had swallowed a few mouthfuls of seawater. The fish merely brushed past him, as if deliberately avoiding him, unwilling to pause even for a second. He had never witnessed such a phenomenon in his life. As a result, the logs he had prepared were long swept away to who knows where. Even himself was pushed forward by the current generated by the fish school. Are you alright? Something seems wrong in the sea. Suna sent a private message. Fishing on the shore, she too noticed the anomaly. But he had noticed earlier and had already experienced it firsthand. Fine just swallowed some seawater. The fish in the sea have gone mad, all swimming forward frantically. I think the black mist is coming. Swimming back to shore, you come and help me. He replied. He didn't have much energy left and wasn't confident he could swim back, so he wanted Suna to assist him. Fortunately, he had thought ahead, and thanks to Suna pulling him, he made it. After landing, Yang's energy was only 23 and timber was still short by 15 units. Just that little bit. He staggered to his feet and looked behind. A swarm of giant insects had also swum over. But oddly, the moment these giant insects entered the buffer zone, the safe area, they vanished, as if passing through a membrane of different space-time into another world. At least the bugs can't cross over. He breathed a sigh of relief. If they had gotten in, he might have truly given up. Suna were still short 15 units of timber, and it's impossible to go into the water now. Fishing is unreliable. Let's try digging up some tree roots. He arranged. The missing 15 units didn't seem much, but obtaining them through fishing might take the two of them an entire day or more. And the black mist might not grant another day. After recovering some energy, he also joined in digging but digging roots for timber was extremely inefficient. By dusk, they had only gathered 7 units of timber, still far from the needed 15. He was burning with anxiety. In the distance, the shadow of the black mist was already visible. 3 massive giant insects swam over each, seemingly specially selected, 7 or 8 meters in diameter, advancing side by side, crashing into the buffer zone, then vanishing. At the spot where the 3 giant insects vanished, 3 enormous harpoons fell, followed by mournful cries and howls. Ada, Air, Gooden, how come you 3 disappeared? Behind the 3 giant insects followed a huge steel warship. The one speaking was none other than the captain of this ship, Udawe. He recognized the ship at a glance. Though several places on the hull were smoking and scorched, the steel hull and the enormous 200-meter-long body unmistakably belonged to the Steel Ambition. He didn't know how, but Udawe had managed to gather 1,000 units of steel, upgraded the ship to level 2, and fought his way out of the giant insect swarm. The ship bore marks of intense battle and bloodstains everywhere, and a huge sharp jaw knife was even embedded in the deck from some unfortunate giant insect that had been blown to pieces. After the upgrade, the ship's artillery count was astonishing. Besides a super cannon with a caliber close to 5 meters at the front, there were no fewer than 40 gun barrels extending from the sides, though many were crooked and broken. Captain Udawe stood alone on the bridge, a cigarette dangling from his mouth, cursing, occasionally glancing back at the black mist not far behind. Not long ago, he had been a chubby, middle-aged man. But now, after an intense high-speed voyage, he had lost weight enviably, with dark circles under his eyes, completely different from before. As for the speed of the Steel Ambition, it couldn't be described as slow, only as extremely slow. In Yang-Yi's eyes, accustomed to ship speeds of dozens of knots, this ship was pitifully sluggish. Suna stood beside Yang-Yi, both watching the giant vessel. Further behind was the black mist, moving at 15 knots, but still a considerable distance from the Steel Ambition. Without the giant insects pulling, the Steel Ambition couldn't outrun the black mist. The captain was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan jumping around. Finally, he spotted a man and a woman on the island ahead. His eyes lit up, and he immediately waved and shouted, "Hey, you two! Emergency! Can you give me a hand?" But the distance was too far, his voice couldn't carry. Without choice, Udawe had to steer toward the island. After the upgrade, his Steel Ambition's movement speed had increased by 100. Steel ambition level 2, durability 5829100000, capacity 20,000 units, speed 10 knots, ship skill, full firepower increases artillery rate of fire to 200 for 15 minutes. Triple harpoon can penetrate and hook an object, cooldown 1 hour. Sea Monster Bane, a super cannon with astonishing power that can send sea monsters back to their origin, cooldown 4 hours. Description: it is bigger, stronger, and tougher. Speed increased to 200. Yu Dawei was initially surprised to see Yang Yi and Su Na, but quickly regained his composure. These two must be the other survivors in Storm Sea. If they were willing to lend him a hand, he might be saved. In this buffer zone, he couldn't find a suitably sized giant thing to help tow the ship. Seeing that shouting didn't work, Yu Dawei had a brainstorm and tried the logs area chat instead. Yu Dawei, captain of the Iron Ambition. Can you see my message? Yu Dawei sent in the regional channel. By now only 3 players remained in the buffer zone, so he wasn't worried about contacting the wrong person. Hello, Yang Yi, captain of the Nightmare Star. Yang Yi replied. Captain Yang, where is your ship? It sank. What? Yu Dawei was dumbfounded. He didn't know that a sunken ship could be rebuilt. He thought he was doomed. It wasn't until Yang Yi explained the situation that he understood. Short of 7 units of wood. No problem, I'll send you 100. Yu Dawei immediately replied. But after your ship is repaired, can you give me a tow? Yang Yi thought for a moment and agreed. With time pressing and the black mist closing in, the only way for them to escape was to work together. Seeing Yang Yi's agreement, Yu Dawei's suspended heart finally settled. He replied, "I'll come closer now. Don't attack me. That pistol on your belt, right?" Yang Yi was a bit surprised. The Iron Ambition was still at least a few kilometers away. How could he see such details? Did Yu Dawei have a telescope? But in fact it was Yu Dawei's talent. He had 2 talents. Eagle Eye Perception 2, exceptional eyesight skilled at tracking and aiming. The second talent had unlocked only after he killed a large number of giant sea creatures. Firepower Supreme: as long as you have sufficient firepower you dare to face any enemy. Reason: will never drop below 50. Truth lies only within the range of cannons. The Iron Ambition gradually approached the island. The black mist had already covered half the sky, only 15 nautical miles away from the Iron Ambition. At this distance they no longer needed to chat through the log. They could hear each other by shouting. "They'll send the wood over with the whale harpoon, don't be afraid," Yu Dawei shouted. With that, the Iron Ambition's whale harpoon shot out, carrying a large bundle of wood that landed just over 10 meters from Yang Yi. The bundle contained exactly 100 units. With sufficient materials, Yang Yi did not hesitate. He quickly chose a suitable spot operated in the log and began rebuilding the ship. After clicking confirm, the materials flew up, scattered into tiny fragments, and then assembled like building blocks to form a ship. The ship was about 30 meters long, still looking like a ghost ship, but much larger than before. The hull remained old and covered with barnacles. The captain's skeleton was tied to the bow with a few strands of seaweed hanging from it, as if it had just floated up from the sea. Compared to the Nightmare, the biggest difference was in the ship's midsection. A huge crystal ball now stood in. Parts of the hull were covered with rusty iron sheets, making it look much sturdier than before. Nightmare Star level 2, durability 10001000, capacity 3,000 units, speed 60 knots, hull skills. Nightmare sleep quality on board is extremely poor, causing nightmares. Energy recovery efficiency 75, affects only the captain. Fisherman's curse cannot catch normal fish, increased probability of catching abnormal objects. Astrology displays surrounding sea map within a radius of 150 nautical miles, viewable in the crystal ball. Can set alerts to notify in the form of vibrations when other players appear. Peep can search by ship name or player name to obtain the coordinates of that ship and view its image, limited to 1 target per day. Description: you chose to merge with a ghost ship. Hope you don't regret it. Yang Yi finished reading the ship's information and was generally satisfied. After the merge, the ship became sturdier and faster. The astrology skill had evolved, increasing the sea map range, and the peep skill now covered the entire map. "Let's go aboard." Yang Yi called Su Na aboard. Once inside the Nightmare Star, Yang Yi noticed differences in the interior as well. Next to the captain's cabin, there was an additional bedroom, Su Na's room. The cargo hold was also larger, with 2 expansion slots that could accommodate 2 additional expansion buildings. It was almost as if the potential of 2 ships had been combined. Everything on the ship remained, including the pirate costume, fishing net, fishing rod, coconuts, some food, and fresh water. Even a part of the giant insect corpse that Yang Yi had previously decapitated was left behind, an unexpected bonus. On the other side, Yu Dawei was anxious. He feared Yang Yi would abandon him and sail away. Although Yu Dawei was confident he could stop the Nightmare Star. If it came to that, he would be finished. Fortunately, Yang Yi was not a fool. Nightmare Star Captain Yang Yi has applied to add you as a friend. Yu Dawei immediately accepted. Then Yang Yi sent a private message. "I'm coming to the stern now. Throw me your grappling hook." Seeing the message, Yu Dawei let out a long breath, walked out of the bridge to the bow deck, and found himself face to face with Yang. But the iron ambition was larger than the nightmare star, so Yang could only see the upper half of Yu Dao's body. The latter, though still cautious, came nonetheless. Captain Yu, your ship is too big. So I have to tell you in advance, if my ship towing your iron ambition can't reach 15 knots, then don't blame me for abandoning you, and you don't attack me. Deal? Yu Dao pondered for a moment, his expression shifting between hesitation and determination. After a long while he replied, if that's the case, can I take shelter on your ship? No problem. Yang Yi agreed decisively. After all, a ship can be rebuilt, but people are the most important. If you lose your life, everything is over. Yu Dao threw the grappling hook from the iron ambition. Yang Yi caught it and tied it to multiple points to distribute the force, evenly preventing any single point from breaking. As for the toughness of the grappling hook rope, there was no need to worry. The log stated it had infinite durability. After securing it, Yang Yi messaged Su Na to go full speed ahead. The iron ambition also powered up to maximum. Both captains' hearts were in their throats as they watched the speed gradually increase. 11 knots. 12 knots. It wasn't until the speed exceeded 15 knots and reached 16 that the tense pair began to relax. If it had been below 15, that would have been troublesome. Fortunately, the Nightmare Star's power was not to be underestimated. In the end, the ship reached 17 knots, 2 nautical miles faster than the black mist behind them.